Lord, yo, good morning. How are you? Can y'all hear me now? I'm a whole hot mess. I hope y'all can hear me now. Can y'all hear me? Yay! Spins! You can hear me. Yay! Okay. All right. I'm a whole hot mess. I thought I hit go live. I was over here talking to myself. Anyways, Jenny question, because when I went in to do the law and crime this morning, it says that I have to have a um, membership because it's rude. So I'm gonna do a temporary one because it's free, and hopefully I'll remember to cancel it. I didn't realize that that was a thing, or I would have done it last night. So if y'all will stand by, I will get this going. Um, and I will share my screen, and then we will not be a whole hot mess. Or we will be a whole hot mess because that's what we do. So, um, today is the 2nd, so I need to cancel it on the 8th. All right, let's do this. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I'm a whole hot mess. Oh, it won't take that call. Fine. Oh, because it said it. Oh, y'all, I swear. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'll look at the chat in a second. I am trying to get this law and crime set up so that um, we can stream it. Because that would be great, since that's the point of this whole thing. So let me do this. All right, y'all, I apologize. It didn't do this last night.
Hey,
Hey,
can you hear me?
yes, ma'am. Sorry.
No, so just go. Good morning, everyone. Hi.
Look, you already
Uh,
had to bail me out. I just started. Y'all, you already had to bail me out.
no. I don't want you to. You don't have to order or buy anything on Long Time Network.
Well, it's not letting me in without doing a free trial.
No, you go to when you go onto Long Crime.
Uh huh.
Just click on the. You know how they've got like the community tab and playlists, and click on live,
Uh huh.
and then scroll down below that first row of premium streams.
Oh, they tried to be slick, did they?
Yeah. Do you
Because
see
I
it now?
scrolled down and I didn't see it. So hold on. Thank God you're here. Hi. Um. Okay. So live streams. Is it? Is it the live streams?
Yeah.
Oh, for the love. Okay. Lord. I was panicking.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. I ain't never. I don't even know what that is. What Law and Crime Network has on there that what you're paying for. I mean, I don't understand why I want to pay for the streams when I can just go watch the lives free. I don't understand what that even is or what that means. But yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh crap. Look at it. Long crime and long crime. Hey y'all. Okay. I'm all right. So let me see here. Still on the law and crime. Let me it's wanting to do, I don't want it to do full screen. So I'm sorry you had to come in already. I've been on for a minute.
No, it's okay. Not no
Um,
problem.
I
I'm in the back of a vehicle driving down the interstate. I'm driving.
driving down the interstate. How do I? Why isn't it letting me? Well, that'll work. Um, it's not letting me share my screen the same way like I did. Why did we even practice last night?
I don't know. You got this. Just like Spin said, QB, you got this. Hey,
How's
Sherry.
that?
There you go.
Okay. All right. I can still see the chat over there. But if I do, what did I do? Oh, God. All right, let's see now what it looks like. Oh, is that good?
Is what?
Is that good? That's good, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So it was when I was trying to, hey, Morgana. If I didn't say hi to everybody, hey, everybody, welcome in. If you wouldn't mind, hit the like button, share the button, do all the YouTube things for our girl Jenny. And yeah, appreciate y'all. I'm sorry it was a little rocky. I came out here early to start, and that didn't work. So, yeah. So tomorrow they are taking a field trip to the house. So they are not having court from 9 to 1. I do not know if they're having court in the afternoon. So we can watch Daybell in the morning, or we can watch the rest of what we missed today and then watch Daybell and then see if they come on and then we can jump over there, or however y'all want to do it. But we'll kind of play it by ear. I don't know why they can't just have a full day of court and not mess with me when I'm trying to do this. So, how is everybody? Y'all good this morning? Where'd Jenny go?
I'm right here. I was just muting myself for a second. But I
Hi,
wanted.
Mickey Jor.
Oh wait, Lur. Yeah, say hi.
Hi, Mickey Jor's husband driving.
Huh? I don't know. I couldn't hear.
Say it again, QB.
Hi, Mickey Jor.
Hello, Q Beer.
Love you.
She said love you.
Love you, girl.
And hi, Mickey Jor's husband for driving. Thank you. Um, yeah. So I've got it up on my phone just in case my computer decides to flake out.
Yeah.
I have turned off any additional electronicals. So we don't have a meltdown.
You are.
I'm trying, ma'am. So, oh Lord, I'm trying to shut down my whole thing. Stop it. I'm a little stuffly this morning. Love you, Spins. Yes, electronicals. That's a word. I made it up.
Like
Y'all
difficult.
haven't had my coffee yet? It's not okay. Can y'all hear me okay? We good? So what I'm going to do is when it starts,
Yeah, everything sounds
Okay,
good.
good.
Hey, Lauren and Spin, Morgana, Henny. Sorry, I'm doing the because I'm in the car.
I'm trying to shake the sleepies. I accidentally took 2 allergy meds last night.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, but I'm up. I'm awake. I'm here. I'm good. It messed me up a little bit.
All
Well, I
right.
have my pre-done, so I have the old allergy med in there, and then I started taking the Zyrtec, and I haven't replaced it out yet because I'm almost to the end, and I'm gonna have to redo the meds anyways. And so, I've just been taking it out, taking the other one out, and putting the Zyrtec in as I take it. I didn't do that last night.
Ah.
So, I did knock myself out, but not completely because I don't ever completely get knocked out. So then when I was awake, like my vertigo was like, "Hey girl, how you been?" And yeah. So, but I am on time and I'm proud. I do not have coffee and my dog ain't been out yet. But no, I'm not drugged anymore. That was last night.
I'm gonna jump off here and let you do your thing.
Oh Lord.
Yeah,
I
my
love you.
phone's getting hot. Like the back of it's getting hot. I don't know if it's because I'm not on Wi-Fi and I'm on here. I don't know.
Put it on. If it keeps doing that, Jenny, put it on low battery. That's what mine was doing. It was the battery overheating.
Okay.
So put it on low battery. Ooh, y'all, Adam Montgomery's May 9th. Trash. Yeah, put it on low battery. Anyways, love you. Let us know when you get there, please.
Will do. It'll probably be about 1, 2, I think, something like that.
Well, y'all be safe.
We will.
Love you.
Love you. Love you all in the chat. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I almost hit end.
Ma'am, don't hit the red button.
Don't hit the red button, Jenny.
Girl, if you would have ended this stream and it would have been you and not me, I'd have laughed so hard for days. For days.
Oh,
Don't
love
do
you
it.
too, Henny. Love you, Spins. Love you, Margina. Lauren. I love y'all. All y'all's. All right. Love you. Love you. Mean it.
Love
Bye.
you, mean it. Bye. Look, they already late, y'all. Rude. Right, you saw that, Spins? Look, I'd have laughed. If she'd have hit that red button, I'd have laughed so hard. So hard. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to wait for them to start and then right, Lauren, rude. Um, and then I will mute myself and I will make my coffee and I will take my doggo out. Can y'all hear my kiddo? My kit this morning? She's saying hi. I don't have noise canceling on, ma'am. They can hear you. Are you saying hi? Say hi. Hi. Can y'all hear her? I don't know if you can hear her or not. I don't have noise canceling on, so can you? I guess that's a yes. Ma'am, they can hear you. You have to be quiet. Be quiet. Yeah. Hi. Wow. Hi. 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 Yes. Is this the squeaker show now? Yeah, she talks to me. She's a whole hot mess. Oh, they're late. Rude. Why y'all late? I need y'all to get on with it. Let me see. Audio. See if I can do some noise canceling. Echo cancellation. Automatically adjust mic volume. Let's see noise. cancellation. So y'all just gonna have to hear what you hear. All right. Tell Sadie, Squeaker says hi. Or actually, her name is Nays. I call her Squeaker sometimes. But hey, Kit Kit. All right. So, if everybody will hit the like button, I appreciate it. I do need noise cancellation. If y'all could hear what I got going on right now, because I've got the phone hooked up in case my computer decides to go rogue, so we don't drop the whole stream. And so I can kind of hear it in the background, and it's kind of annoying. But oh, hi, Sadie. Boots the snoots. Well, do cats have snoots? I guess they do. They got noses. This cat is patting me on the shoulder, y'all. I wish you could see her, but I'm not turning my video on, so don't even start. What do y'all think? You want to do I almost said Adam Montgomery because he's up on my screen here. Do y'all want to do Daybell, or we'll finish what we missed today, and then we can yes, Spins, that's not happening. We'll finish what we missed today in the morning, and then we can go to Daybell and see if Karen Reed has trial tomorrow afternoon. I don't know if she's going to have trial tomorrow afternoon or not. I have not been able to find anywhere, but we're just going to play it by ear. And then, yeah, we'll just play it by ear. And I don't know. So, word on the street, word on the crime street is that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be full days for Karen Reed, and Tuesday and Thursday will be half days. I don't know how they're planning on getting anything done. But if that's the case, that might give Jenny the opportunity to catch up on like Daybell or Delphi or whatever. So, but Henny, I think Henny might be behind. But hey, Henny. I wish y'all could see this cat. She's tapping me on the shoulder, meowing. She's mad because I'm leaned over covering my lap, so she don't get in my lap just yet. So, yeah, they're late. They're late. They're late for a very important date. So let me try, while we're doing this, let me try something and see if I, um, all right, let me look over here. Gotta leave that up. All right, can y'all hear me? Okay, now. All right, can y'all hear me? And am I echoing? Yeah, that's not gonna work. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna wait until they get started, and then I will mute myself and I'll do the things that I need to do. Um, I don't know where they are this morning. Probably the judge is probably late. She'll be breathing heavy in the mic. Um, yeah, they were talking about that was it last night? Well, it probably wasn't last night. I was rewatching. I think it was Vinny was talking about her huffing into the microphone and about how um not he didn't say biased. How that I can't think of the word. Y'all gotta excuse me. My meds, not even the ones that I overdid last night, my regular meds, they mess with my brain. I can't sometimes find words. So but they were talking about how it could look bad to the jury when she like that, and cause some bias to the jury. And so that was interesting because I've been saying that all along. I mean, she only huffs during the defense and not during the prosecution. And then, like Spence was saying the other day, I thought it was a great observation, Spence, because she was telling them to. You see the fan spinning? Why do you see the fan spinning? I don't see the fan spinning. Um, Not live, y'all. Well, Long Crime apparently ain't got it up yet because I can't do court TV. I have to wait on Long Crime. Make sure it says it's live. I bet I'm on the wrong one, y'all. How much you want to bet I'm on the wrong one? All right, let me see. Oh, what you said the other day, Spins, was that she was shushing the sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. Do they have a do they have a Coburger trial today or hearing today? Sorry, y'all. I cannot talk and do the same thing. Oh, I guess they do have one today. Ain't that a thing? Law and Crime does not have it going yet. So I don't know what the dealio is. Hey, Mickey Jor. Okay, sorry, Spence. All right. No, what you said was that she didn't hush or didn't tell them to wait for the sirens when it was the defense, but on the prosecution, she told them, oh, why don't y'all wait a minute while the sirens go by? And so I thought that was interesting. So let me share my screen again. See if this does it without. Oh Lord. Oh, here they come. I hear them. I don't see them. Well, I hear them, but I don't see them. I don't know what they're doing. It ain't me, y'all.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All parties having anything to do before the Honorable First Justice Federal County, now sitting in the ghetto, Superior Court within the Norfolk County of Norfolk. Draw near, give your attendance, you shall be heard. I'll say the follow-up in this court. Thank you.
Your Honor, this is 22-82117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel identify themselves for the records, siding with the Commonwealth?
Adam Miley for the Commonwealth. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, Your Honor. Laura McLaughlin for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
Alan Jackson on behalf of Ms. Reed. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
Morning, Judge David Yannetti for Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Yannetti. Good morning, Ms. Reed. Good morning, jurors. So I have to ask you those same three questions. Were you all able to follow the instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone? Yes. Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left here on Tuesday? No. Everyone said no or shook their heads. So, jurors, from time to time, I will give you instructions or talk to you for a few minutes about how you evaluate evidence. So I just want to take a couple of minutes today. It's part of my job, where my job is to teach the jury about the law. So in considering the testimony of any witness, please remember that questions are not evidence. Only the answers, which are in fact the only part of the exchange between the lawyer and the witness that are given under oath, are evidence. So if a witness is asked, isn't it true that after you learned that your uncle left you money in his will, you poisoned him? And the witness answers no. Based solely on that question and that answer, there's no evidence that the witness has an uncle, that the uncle had a will, that the uncle left the witness money, that the witness knew that he did, or that the witness poisoned him. So going forward, I want you to consider the evidence in that regard. Also, there were videos shown to you, and I expect that throughout the course of this trial, there'll be many more videos shown to you. These videos are evidence, and there's audio on these. So what the video shows is for you folks to decide, not me, not any of the lawyers. What an audio recording says is for you to decide, not me, not any of the lawyers, because you find the facts. That's your job. We all have different jobs, but finding the facts in the case is your job. Okay, so with that, please get the Commonwealth's witness back on the stand, Mr. Flamati. Jim? Yes. Swear it again, please. Thank you.
Just watch your step forward.
I just need you to raise your right hand one more time. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury the case now and here, to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Now, before I begin, may I just approach the witness to return Exhibit 1?
Sure.
What?
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Now, firefighter model. Um, I believe when we had left off the other day, you had arrived in the area of 34th Fairview Road, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you arrived there, what, if anything, did you do upon your arrival?
So on arrival, positioning the apparatus is going to be our most important. I'm trying to figure out where our patient, parking our apparatus close enough, especially at nighttime, that we can light up the scene as well as we can. Try and figure out how to approach a scene, because if we have to trek equipment farther distances, it can slow our response down. So we try and make sure our arrival and positioning is as best as we can put it.
And as far as positioning in reference to when you first are sort of pulling up on the scene, where are you in the ambulance again?
So I would have been the passenger of the ambulance. Usually the tech that's leading into the call will sit on the passenger side to try and mentally get ready for what's going on, whether it's reviewing protocols or just trying to assess the information coming across the radio so you can update your treatment plan as much as you can before you even see the victim.
And when the ambulance comes to a stop or it's parked in your positions, where is, what if anything do you see sort of as far as the scene is concerned?
So we have our fire apparatus that are helping light up the scene, but we also have two female parties going by to the victim on the side of the road, and going back and forth between that person and the side of the road.
And from the position when you first arrived, are you able to see the person on the side of the road?
You can see a shape of a person, so we know that's where the patient is, because we reported that there was a party on the side of the road. So seeing a body shape, that clued us that that was where we were headed.
In addition to the ambulance that you're in, how many other vehicles are on scene when you get there?
When I get there, I believe it is engine 3 and car 5.
And beyond sort of the vehicles from your department, what if any other vehicles do you see when you get there?
If I remember correctly, it was just a personal vehicle. I don't remember if there's any police cars on scene at that time.
And from your orientation when you pull up, where is the body positioned? To your left, your right, or something?
To my left.
And so after the ambulance is positioned, what do you do?
So then it's going to be bringing all the equipment over to the patient's side to be able to extricate them from that situation, whether it's a house or a street or a road. We assess where they are and then the best tools to get them out into the ambulance to be able to work effectively on the patient.
When you proceed over to, now again, at some points subsequent later on, are you able to identify who the person on the ground is?
Yes, we will try and get a general idea of the age of the patient, the positioning of the patient, how they were found, and then when we get them into the ambulance, we can start identifying ways to register that patient in the emergency room. So identifiers, whether it's a license or witnesses, or we try and figure out who they are so they can get registered at the hospital.
And at some point, were you able to identify who this person was?
That's correct. His wallet was in his pocket and we were able to grab his license.
And who were you able to identify?
That was John O'Keefe.
And so with reference to Mr. O'Keefe, when you first observed him on the ground, how far away from the street or the roadway is he?
I'd say approximately 10 feet away from the road.
And how is he positioned as far as how is his body positioned on the ground?
I have to review, but I believe he was supine on his back.
Just in general terms, first, when you're responding to a call of this nature, what are some of the protocols or that you were speaking about? What is it that you're seeking to do or assess when you first arrive?
So we're trying to determine if it's a cardiac arrest, whether it's a viable transport or workable arrest. We have certain protocols within the Massachusetts protocols for whether we work the patient or we relieve the patient on scene if it's a police matter, if there's injuries not sustainable with life. So we're trying to make that assessment before we make any decisions.
Let me stop you there just for 1 second. You use a term as far as cardiac arrest. Based on your training and experience, what do you want to say in that term?
So cardiac arrest, to the best of my knowledge, is just the cessation of electrical and mechanical activity in the cardiac muscle. So the cardiac muscle pumps blood throughout the body, and when that stops, all life stops after that.
Now, in particular reference to the conditions, the weather conditions that you find yourself in, what, if anything else, is sort of on the scale or spectrum in regard to diagnosis?
So cardiac arrest, depending on where they're found, we try and figure out what led them to be at that point. So we're looking at weather conditions as well. That can also affect viability of resuscitation. So due to the extreme weather, extreme cold, we'll attempt resuscitation on that patient due to the fact that it'll prolong viability of the arrest or ability to recover from cardiac arrest afterwards. So weather is definitely a key factor in where they are found.
And you're familiar with the term based on your training experience called hypothermia?
Correct.
And so what, if any, sort of relationship does cardiac arrest have? Well, let me ask you this first. What is your understanding of the term hypothermia?
Exposure to extreme cold that lowers your core and extremity temperatures down to below 95 degrees, usually.
And what, if any, interplay is there between hypothermia and cardiac arrest?
So like I said before, it'll prolong how long, it'll preserve the body after arrest. So if somebody's found in like a cold water situation, there's been multiple reports of patients recovering after being drowned in cold water for up to an hour. So viability is definitely improved by the cold weather.
As far as viability is concerned, you talk about in your assessment. What are sort of the steps that go into your assessment?
So we're looking at obvious signs of death. So we're looking at exposure of brain matter. We're looking at traumatic injuries, decapitation, things that would basically be non-life sustainable. We're looking at signs of lividity and rigor to basically show us how long the patient has been down for.
And the age of a particular patient, what, if any, relationship does that have to your assessment?
So it'll show the extent of frailty the patient has. If somebody's an elderly patient, severe cancer patient, their ability to sustain a cardiac event like that is less. So somebody that's younger or middle-aged will have a much better chance of recovery afterwards. But that would really be the only key that we're looking at.
And what, if any, observations did you make of Mr. O'Keefe during your assessment of him initially?
Just that he was a middle-aged male, and that was all we had.
And as far as the other things that you're talking about, as far as viability or resuscitation, what, if anything, did you observe with reference to Mr. Keefe in regard to that?
So with the viability, we were looking at any rigidity or rigor in the body, or lividity or separation of blood. You would have a pooling of blood or bruising, it would look like, at the lower parts of the body, depending on how the person's positioned. Basically, if they're supine, you'd have positioning or pooling underneath the body. And then you would have stiffness of the arms, legs, jaw, neck to be able to move the body. We're looking to, if they don't have those things present, it's another check mark of saying this is viable, we can work this.
And specifically as it applies to your assessment of Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, do you recall in regard to that initial assessment as far as viability?
So his limbs were able to be moved, jaw was able to be moved. The posterior of his body was red, so not the indicative of lividity that we're looking for. So we termed it to be a viable arrest and continue to work.
You mentioned as far as sort of gathering your equipment, bringing it over to Mr. O'Keefe, what, if any, equipment did you gather?
So equipment initially is going to be our scoop stretcher to be able to pick the patient up, break apart, put it underneath him. We have our first in bag, an airway bag, cardiac monitor. We'll bring all that over to the patient's side to be able to do as much as we can in that situation. But due to the weather, we wanted to get him out of the weather because that was one of the things that was hurting him at that point, is getting him into the warmer ambulance and beginning the warming process. So get into an area where we can assess the patient thoroughly with good lighting and to be able to expose the patient, begin the warming process.
And when you go over to where Mr. O'Keefe is, about 10 feet off the roadway, who, if anyone, from your department goes along with?
So I have Matt Kelly with me and Tim Nuttall. I also have Frank Walsh, Katie McLaughlin, and Greg Woodbury, and Captain Robbery.
And as far as this sort of initial assessment on the ground with Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, were sort of each of those respective people doing with regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
I'd have to review specific interventions as far as who did what, when. But that's why we document things immediately afterwards, so it's all fresh. So CPR was initiated by me and ALS assessment as well. So I can go over individual interventions if you'd like, but it's really a call.
And for the record, sir, you're looking at exhibit number 160, and what page of that are you looking at?
It says 2 of 5 of my EMS report, but there's also the NFIRS report on the top as well.
So initially, when you go over to Mr. O'Keefe, how many other people are sort of in that area at that time?
So in the area, we have the first responders, and then we have the 2 female parties on scene.
Where were the 2 females in relation to Mr. O'Keefe?
So as we're approaching the scene, they were kind of in between us and the patient. So we tried to gather as much information as we could from them as we could.
So once you make that determination as far as viability of resuscitative efforts, sort of specifically, what are you and the other firefighters doing in regard to those efforts with Mr. O'Keefe?
So we're beginning CPR. We're trying to establish good quality CPR, get the patient onto our stretcher, begin an IO, start medication, start ventilating the patient. All this, all of the conditions that the body has, we're trying to remedy through intervention. So we're trying to breathe for the patient. We're starting to press on his chest, to do CPR, to cause his cardiac muscle to compress, spread blood through the heart, cardiac muscle, cerebral brain. And we're trying to reverse what's happening in the body.
Now, as far as when Mr. O'Keefe, you observed him on the ground, what, if any, snow did you observe on or around him in that area?
So the snow was probably up to the mid-axillary point. So we're looking at probably halfway up his rib point. Top of his body was clear.
And any snow did you observe on or around him in that area?
So the snow was probably up to the mid-axillary. Top of his body was clear.
And do you know about how much snow was covering his body up to the mid-axillary?
I'd say probably about 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches.
Now, as far as your observations of Mr. O'Keefe when he's on the ground, what, if any, observations did you make as far as how he was dressed?
For the exposure, I'd say he was pretty underdressed. Long sleeve t-shirt, jeans, nothing really substantial to be out in that type of weather.
And at this point or any subsequent point, what, if any, observations did you make of Mr. O'Keefe's footwear?
By the time so our first priority is obviously going to be treating the patient. His clothes do matter, but it's on the list of priorities, not huge. So by the time we figured out he was missing one of his shoes, we were already at the hospital at that point.
And do you recall which of his shoes he was missing?
I don't know.
And as far as that missing shoe, was that something that you or any of the other firefighters, paramedics would have needed to have removed on scene pursuant to any sort of treatment?
Nothing would have been done through the feet. It would have been just exposure of the patient to see possibly the extent of frostbite, if it had started affecting extremities, fingers, nose, that type of thing, of hypothermic reaction there.
Would that be something that would have been removed by one of you or one of the other firefighters while he was on the ground?
If it would have been removed, both of them would have been removed to assess that. It wouldn't do much good to just remove one and leave it there on scene.
Now, as far as the two females that you observed, did they sort of remain in the same position you initially observed them? Did they move around or something?
They kind of cleared a little bit away from the scene. I would say they moved off to the right of the apparatus so we could work on the patient at that time.
And what, if any, conversation or what, if anything, did you ask either of those two?
So how the patient was found and what brought them to that situation is critical. So we're trying to figure out as much information past medical history that we can of the patient. So we're trying to find somebody who has knowledge of the event. So as we approach the scene, begin to talk to one of the females. What is going on? Why are they there? What happened?
And you say you're speaking to one of the two females, is that correct?
That's correct.
You see any of those females in the courtroom today?
That's correct. Miss Reed.
Could you just identify as to where Ms. Reed is seated or an article closed?
Right there.
That's the record reflected identification.
Okay.
Now, with regard to one of the two females that you were talking to, was that Ms. Reed or was that somebody else?
That was Miss Reed.
And why, if at all, were you talking to her versus one of the other females that you observed?
She seemed to be the one that was most personally affected by it, so figured she'd had the most information about why the person was there.
And what, if any, observations did you make of her in regard to your conclusion that she was the one who seemed the most personally affected by it?
She was the most distressed on scene, obviously upset, so personally related to or had a kind of relationship with the person.
Before we get to conversations, what, if anything, did you observe Ms. Reed or any of the females doing with reference to Mr. O'Keefe's body when you first started to come up to this?
So I would characterize it as an attempted resuscitation. She was attempting to do CPR, but due to the erratic behavior, she was running back and forth between the other female on scene and the body, back and forth, trying to press on his chest, wake him up, talk to him, just to no avail.
And as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if any, questions you asked in regard to the demographics or anything else?
So do you have any information of who this is? How are they here? Tried to get any type of information we could from her at that time, but with no luck.
When you say with no luck, what, if anything, what, if any, response did you receive from Ms. Reed in regards to your question?
So the only response that I was personally given was just, I hit him. Oh my God, I hit him.
And when she's saying, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him, how loudly is she saying that?
So she was within 2 feet of me, but very loud. Any type of follow-up questioning, did you hit him with your hand? Did you kick him? What happened? She just repeated the phrase over and over again, I hit him.
And just to be clear, where does this conversation occur?
This was as we're bringing equipment over to the patient. The interventions are going to be started basically by whoever gets over to the scene first. I'm trying to gather information as a lead paramedic to try and coordinate interventions and therapy to kind of holistically be the team leader in that situation and treat and transport the patient. So it was on approach to the patient, probably halfway between the ambulance and the patient.
And with regard to that treatment of Mr. O'Keefe, you referenced it earlier being within your report. What were sort of those steps or what, if anything, did you and the other firefighters do with regard to treatment? Before you answer that, Your Honor, may I request, may the witness just refer to the DMS report as it goes?
Yes, if need be.
Thank you. So We try and document through our flow chart of all of the interventions that we're doing. So CPR is obviously going to be our first priority. CPR is initiated, unchanged but successful in the actual intervention itself, no complications. We do our ALS assessment that we talked about of any further indications of this is not a viable arrest. We determined it was a viable arrest and we move on. Then we're going to start, we refer to it as a bag valve mask at 15 liters per minute on oxygen. The patient's not breathing on their own, so we're trying to assist ventilating that with high flow oxygen as well. And easy IO, which is a needle we put into the bone of the tibia of the patient. That was on that right tibia was the first one we put in. We're going to be putting in warm fluid. We have a warmer in the back to be able to bring up the core temperature. Then we start with epinephrine, 1 milligram through that IO.
I could just stop you there for 1 second. When you say as far as IO and put it into the leg, how is that sort of inserted into the leg?
So we have two different methods we can do. We have a drill, a power drill that drills through the outer layer of the bone into the capillary area of the bone, the soft spongy material. So we drill through that, or we can do it by hand if that fails.
And when it comes to the epinephrine, what is sort of the purpose of that medication? What are you trying to do with that medication?
So that medication will improve, it's a vasoconstrictor. It'll cause the vasculature to constrict. So it'll improve the quality or effectiveness on the cardiac muscle, cardiac vasculature, and the cerebral area.
So as far as the administration of epinephrine is concerned, is that something that's done once or more than once? And is there a protocol for that?
So it's going to be serial every 3 to 5 minutes during the cardiac arrest to try and bring them over to the hospital. So it continues that entire time unless there's a rhythm change or that can change our algorithm of how we approach the patient. If there's a rhythm regain or return of spontaneous circulation.
And so how many times or what times was the epinephrine administered via the IO to Mr. Olson?
Okay, so I have epinephrine at 620, 625, 630, 635, 640, 645.
And when was that first administered? Would that have been at some point when he was outside of the ambulance on the ground or in the ambulance or something else?
It would be dependent on transport time. So we're at patient side at 6:15, transport 6:27. So best estimation would have been inside of the ambulance at that point.
I'm sorry I interrupted you before, but after sort of the introduction of the epinephrine, what if anything did you and the other firefighters?
After the first round? Yeah. So first round of epinephrine. After that, we would drop in what's called an OPA. That would be to push the tongue out of the way, open up the airway to improve our bag valve mass. So it has an open air way to get the oxygen into the lungs. We begin external warming, stripping the patient, getting the heat turned up in the back of the ambulance. We would then switch over from manual CPR done by hand to a mechanical CPR device to ensure adequate, consistent CPR compressions of the chest. It was a Lucas device. Put that on the patient. And then we continue with another round of epi. Patient's starting to warm up this time, so we would do suction at that point to try and suction fluid out of the airway to improve ventilation efforts. Another round of epi is done. We have another suction, this time through a deep suction via the endotracheal tube. Sorry, at 6:22 after warming, we intubated the patient. We have a 7.5 tube paced at 27 centimeters, and then verified through various means, through chest rise, auscultation, waveform, and tidal CO2. So we had complications listed as patient vomiting, aspirating. Suction was then done with a rigid tip suction device. After successful intubation, we then suctioned via French tube through the airway established. Jump back up to 631. Another IO line was established on the opposite tibia on the left side. And then another 3 rounds of epi and then arrival at the hospital.
What was the arrival time at the hospital?
At destination was 6:45.
What hospital was that again? I'm sorry.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
There's a term that you use in your reports called, and I'll probably butcher this, but asystole, is that correct?
Yeah, asystole is going to be a cardiac rhythm where there's no electrical activity in the heart and is referred to as flatline.
What, if any, observations did you make in your treatment diagnosis in regards to Mr. O'Keefe as far as asystole?
So that was the rhythm he was found in. Yeah, from initial rhythm, I have on the EKG at 632 as asystole. So we basically observe that for any changes, whether it's increase of electrical activity, regain of adequate pulses, all of that can kind of be hinted at with the cardiac rhythm. And then we would change our algorithm based on whether we go down the ROSC protocol or we continue down the cardiac arrest protocol.
And whether it's on scene or it's in the ambulance, is there sort of a division of task or division of different skill that's being employed in patient care?
So patient care will have to do with level of training and also proximity on the patient. Where you get into the ambulance is just logistically, if you have the training, it's not a huge open ER, it's a small environment. So we try and not have people jump over each other as best as we can.
And if you recall, who was sort of doing what in relation to treatment of this patient?
So in the back of the ambulance specifically?
Yes.
Okay, in the back of the ambulance, Tim Nuttall was managing the airway. I was the team lead that was kind of coordinating all of the interventions. Matt Kelly was assisting in gathering equipment, doing CPR before the mechanical device was placed on. Basically, they act as an assistant to hand equipment, place things in strategic areas around so we can actually work without having to go get those physical things ourselves.
Now, as far as you indicated removal of Mr. O'Keefe's clothing once in the ambulance, correct?
Yes.
What was it about the, sort of the condition of the clothing that led to the removal of that?
So removal of clothing is actually pretty standard for any cardiac arrest, any traumatic injuries. We're basically trying to get further clues because this is all happening very quickly. So we're trying to get more evidence of why are they here. We're looking for extremity injuries, crush injuries, bruising, anything that we could document, that we could pass on to the emergency room staff and doctors. So we would strip most patients.
And as far as were you involved personally, as far as sort of the cutting of the clothing and stripping the patient?
Yes.
And upon removal of the clothing, what, if anything, did you observe as to sort of the condition of the clothing or texture of the clothing?
Condition seemed pretty well intact, but just wet and cold.
And what, if any, relationship would the wet and cold clothing have to any of the diagnoses that you were running through in regard to this dose?
It would really just be the exposure to the weather would be our biggest trigger off of that, or if you had protruding injuries through the clothing, compound fractures, things like that. The clothing was intact, but we knew it was wet, it was cold. So as we strip things off of him, we can see underneath basically if there are any not every fracture breaks through the skin, not everything causes obvious things, obvious signs. So as we strip the patient, we can begin to further assess.
Take you back just for a second to outside of the ambulance.
Yep.
What, if anything, specifically were you able to observe with reference to any injuries Mr. O'Keefe has sustained?
Injuries are pretty tough to see outside of the ambulance just due to the weather, due to the lighting. We have seen lighting on the ambulance as well, but
let me ask you,
yeah.
as far as what, if any, difference did you know between the lighting in the back of the ambulance versus when you were with Mr. O'Keefe on the ground?
So he was still out in the weather at that point, so bleeding wasn't really obvious at that point. As soon as we get him into the back of the ambulance, then we start noticing hemorrhage from different.
I was trying to pause it. So Joanna's right. The Lucas machine is extremely cool. It straps to the patient. Like they said yesterday, it's basically like a plunger looking thing that does CPR, does compression. It allows for the other hands on deck to do other things. It also ensures high quality CPR is continuous as responders get fatigued. You can have a lessening in the compression. That's why we switch out. But they keep talking about warming the body, and I'm trying to think of a delicate way to say it. There's a saying in EMS. I'll do it delicately. How can I do it delicately? They won't pronounce someone until they're warm. Okay, so if they're cold, that goes for drowning victims. It goes for hypothermia. It goes for if there's no signs of definitive death, like lividity or rigor, or like he said, decapitation, brain matter, stuff like that, then they will continue. The medics and EMS and first responders, they will keep working the patient, usually until they're at least warm, but most of the time all the way to the hospital, because you just don't know. You just don't know. They can come back. So, anyways, just wanted to throw that in there. Lucas machine, if you do Google it, is extremely cool. It's something that came out towards the end of my EMS career. Well, I'm still EMS, but I'm not practicing right now. So, yeah, it's super cool. It's super helpful. It ensures, they call it high quality CPR. When they're saying high quality CPR, it's the best chance for the person to survive. Is basically it. So the Lucas machine is awesome. It is they haven't said anything about the DNA evidence yet. Not much. They did say that the hair that was in the back of the SUV was Officer O'Keefe's, but I haven't seen anything that confirms that. I mean, the blood wouldn't confirm. The DNA on the blood wouldn't confirm it was from a beating. It would just confirm that it was his. But his injuries certainly seem to indicate it was from being beaten. In my personal opinion, it's his injuries, to me, I haven't seen everything yet, but to me are not indicative of being hit by a vehicle. I have seen both, and I would say it's more indicative of him being beaten. But we'll see more. I mean, we haven't seen everything, so I'm trying to remain unbiased. But from what I've seen so far, it doesn't look like he was hit by the vehicle. All right, I'm going back. I just wanted to throw that out.
Different areas of his body. And when you say hemorrhage from different areas, which areas?
So mostly from his mouth, his eyes, nose. Yeah.
And just to be clear for the record, when you use the term hemorrhage based on your training experience, what do you understand that?
Bleeding, external bleeding.
Now, you mentioned that there was some suctioning of Mr. O'Keefe's airway, is that correct?
Correct.
And what, if anything, specifically was suctioned from Mr. O'Keefe's?
Suctioning from the airway was mostly blood, blood, sputum.
And as far as how much, what if anything you have to sort of measure how much blood was suctioned out of Mr. O'Keefe's airway?
So we have a canister that has marks of milliliters, so we can determine as we're suctioning how much is in that container at different times.
And about how much, based on that, was suctioned from Mr. O'Keefe's airway?
So the initial suctioning with the rigid tip was about 150 milliliters. And subsequently, so that would have been above the airway in the mouth in that type of area. We established the intubation, and then deep suctioning with that soft tip through the intubation tube would have been another 50 milliliters of fluid.
Now, with reference to, you mentioned some observations of Mr. O'Keefe's back, correct?
What's that? Sorry.
You mentioned some observations you made earlier in reference to Mr. O'Keefe's back.
Yes.
And what were those again?
So that would have been redness of the skin and the posterior of the body.
What, if any, significance does that have to you as far as your observation?
So redness from the skin, if it's general or across the body, can mean certain things. If it's just a particular area, and due to the fact that it was cold outside, that would have been the initial stages of frostbite or exposure to cold.
And as far as the remainder of Mr. O'Keefe's body, what, if any, other observations did you make, and which areas did you make those observations to in regard to the initial state?
So for as far as the cold exposure, cold exposure, we're looking at the most exterior parts. Extreme cold exposure can lead to frost nip and frostbite in different areas. The first affected areas are going to be your fingers, your ears, your nose, your toes, that type of. So that was a cold, waxy, pale, stark white substance, basically, or condition of his skin.
And on each of those areas that you just described?
Yes.
Now, sort of up in the area of Mr. O'Keefe's head, you mentioned some bleeding from the eyes and the nose, correct?
Yes.
As well as his mouth.
Yes.
And beyond that, what, if any, observations did you make of any other sort of injuries to his head or his face?
So his eyes were pretty well swollen. We were trying to clear areas of blood to figure out if there were any contusions around the head. I believe there was a contusion on his forehead. Also had some markings on his extremities as well.
And just as far as your understanding, based on your training experience, when you use the word contusion, what do you understand that?
Bruising.
And before we get to the extremities, what, if any, observations did you make as far as Mr. O'Keefe's abdomen?
Abdomen we noted as significant as distension or swelling of the belly.
And what, if any, significance does that have to you in regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
It's another of our detailed assessments. We go through the body in a more detailed way to try and find more clues that we can pass on for the assessment. Distension in the belly could be due to trauma or bloating. It could be, those are usually our biggest triggers for distension.
Now, you mentioned as far as the extremities are concerned, what, if anything, did you observe as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's?
So we're looking at, so we had the cold, rigid fingers, hands, feet, then we had multiple dry blood lacerations to the right arm.
Recall specifically where on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm?
Would have been his upper arm.
And you mentioned dry blood, is that correct?
Yes.
So these were not actively bleeding at the time that you observed them?
No.
Now, as far as being dry blood versus actively bleeding, what, if anything, does that indicate to you as far as sort of timing?
So we had active bleeding from other areas in the body. So the fact that it had already stopped and clotted, I would assume that would have been several hours before the incident that led him to be there, but I would guess earlier in the evening.
Now, as far as the history is concerned, your attempts on scene, and then what, if any, attempts were made subsequent when you were in the ambulance to obtain any sort of history of how Mr. O'Keefe came to be there, or what, if any, causing injuries you observed?
Once we get the patient into the ambulance, there was no family, no bystanders in the back of the ambulance, so then it's going to be solely based on physical assessment.
And within sort of the team of firefighters that you had, who, if anyone, did you direct to try and obtain that information while you were in the back?
So that would have been Katie McLaughlin.
And what did you ask Ms. McLaughlin?
So Katie was one of our senior paramedics at the time. So we had enough skilled hands working on the patient at that time. So to direct her, I wasn't able to get as much information and still had a skill to do, or still had a task to do, to run the cardiac arrest. So I directed Miss Reed over to Katie to try and gather more information as to why they were there. If you could get any more information about who he was, events leading to the injury, how long he was down for, any type of information, and then moved on to the patient at that point.
And so firefighter McLaughlin is having this conversation outside of the ambulance, is that correct?
That's correct.
This is going on while you're inside of the ambulance actively treating Mr. O'Keefe.
It was a very quick process. So I start the conversation, wasn't productive, wasn't moving forward, moved her over to firefighter McLaughlin, continued on to the patient, and then started treatment, moved the patient in, and then Katie came into the back of the ambulance to help. So it was a very quick process.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's eyes were concerned, what, if any, observations further did you make as far as Mr. O'Keefe's eyes?
So both eyes were swollen and bleeding.
What, if any, observations were you able to make of his pupils?
I'm sorry, what?
Pupils?
Pupils. So I've documented as 4 millimeters and non-reactive.
What, if any, significance is those observations as far as about the 4 millimeters non-reactive?
So we're looking for equality between the two. So signs of bleeding can be demonstrated by unequal pupils, or if they were restricted, could lead us to believe it was as a result of an opioid interaction. But we're looking at whether they react to light as well. If there's brain activity, if there's still something causing the body to react, you'll have some type of pupillary response. So we shine light, there was no response, so it was fixed and at 4 millimeters.
Now, at some point, you leave the scene en route to Good Samaritan, is that correct?
That's correct.
And who is continuing treatment of Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance during transport?
So back of the ambulance and transport would have been firefighter Kelly, firefighter Nuttall, and myself.
And who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance between Fairview and Good Samaritan?
So that'll be determined by basically just positioning on the engine. So the step driver for that position would then drive as the detailed person over to the ambulance. That was firefighter McLaughlin.
Now, during the transport from Fairview to Good Samaritan, what, if anything, are you and the other firefighters in the back of the ambulance doing as far as continuing treatment of the stroke?
So we started transport at 6:27. So between 6:27 and 6:45, treatments included epinephrine, additional suctioning, managing the airway, placing another intraosseous line, and then 3 additional rounds of epinephrine while the mechanical CPR is continuing CPR.
And during the course of the transport, what, if any, changes in Mr. O'Keefe's status as far as the cardiac arrest or the breathing occurred during the transport?
No changes.
Now, that time that it took to get from Fairview to Good Samaritan, is that sort of a typical transport time?
Not normally. Due to the weather, it was pretty slow driving, even though the ambulance was a smaller vehicle than the engine. Slow transport compared to normal.
And during the course of the transport, what, if any, communication are you having with Good Samaritan in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his eventual arrival there?
Every medical that goes on, we try to give the hospital staff a heads up, basically, of what's coming in. We'll have different alerts that we would give them, whether it's cardiac arrest, a stroke, a STEMI, to have the certain appropriate teams come in and be ready, whether it's a trauma alert. There's different specialties within the hospital that'll treat those different particular cases. So we call them 5 to 10 minutes prior to give that team time to get down into the emergency room to get ready to work.
When you arrived at Good Samaritan, with anyone were you met by, and sort of what happened with regard to Mr. O'Keefe?
So we're continuing interventions from the ambulance through the bay into their code room. We're then met by registration, a registered nurse, and the doctor that took care of the patient, as well as a team of other assistants and CNAs.
And where do you physically go with Mr. O'Keefe, or how does that work?
Yep, so that's referred to as a transfer of care. So there's different people, like I said, it's a team base where different people are in charge of different things. You'll have the nurse in charge that's in charge of documenting our interventions that have been done so far, time of down, the patient was down, and then she starts documenting all the different interventions that were done by the hospital staff as well. You also give a report to the doctor, who's then taking over as lead for the cardiac arrest. They're going to start issuing orders for the patient and treatment. And then you have registration that will get the information to register the patient that they can tie all of their interventions to.
And during that sort of process of exchange of information and things of that nature, what, if anything, did you learn in regard to the sort of core body temperature of Mr. O'Keefe?
So to add that assessment, I believe he had core body temperature of 80 degrees.
What, if any, significance does that have in regard to sort of the typical core body temperature?
Typical core body temperature is going to be in the high 90s, where body temperature being at 80 with a rectal temp or core temp is going to be extreme hypothermia.
Now, you're at Good Samaritan for a certain amount of time, correct, before you quit?
Correct.
And at that point in time, while you were at Good Samaritan, that initial time, what, if anything, did you learn as far as Mr. O'Keefe's status or what had happened?
So as we talked about before, with the hypothermia and the extreme cold, they're going to work that for an extended period of time. Most cardiac arrests, I will try and hang out by the patient or in the area. As new staff come through, different things are found. The doctors and nurses might have follow-up questions. So I try to stay available as an asset that they can bounce those questions off, at least for 10 or 15 minutes afterwards, to make sure the whole process is completely transferred from all the interested parties.
And during that course of time, what, if anything, did you learn as sort of the eventual status of Mr. O'Keefe?
We didn't learn anything while we were at the hospital. We then cleared the hospital, returned back to quarters to decon the ambulance and to replenish all the equipment that we had used, get back in service, and move on with the shift.
At some point during the course of the shift, did you have occasion to go back to Good Samaritan?
Me personally, no. It would have been for an additional medical call if there was any calls for service afterwards.
Did you recall whether or not you went back to Good Samaritan for any additional medical calls or anything of that nature?
I don't recall.
So if I could direct your attention to the screen just over there. Ms. Gilman, if I could please have exhibit number 9. And so direct your attention to what's been previously marked as exhibit number 9 up on the screen. You recognize what's in that photograph?
The house.
Is that the house that you responded to? Is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number. Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 14. Again, sir, what's up on the screen? You recognize what that is?
I see blood, snow, general area, not small.
And lastly, Mr. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 18. And again, firefighter Formati, do you recognize what's depicted up on the screen as exhibit number 18?
Yes.
Can I approach the witness now?
Yes.
Very much.
So, sir, I'm going to hand you a laser pointer. Basically, just press on this button here in this direction on the screen. So, firefighter Formati, within this photograph up on the screen is exhibit 18. Do you see the area in which you observed Mr. O'Keefe supine on the ground when you first arrived?
Yes.
And using that laser pointer, could you direct the jury's attention to where in this photograph you observed Mr. O'Keefe when you initially arrived?
Initially arrived would have been in this area here.
Okay. And just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes. If you could turn, thank you.
Nothing further for this witness at this time, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to start sort of at the beginning. When you first arrived
Yes.
at the location, you indicated that you could in fact see the body from your perspective, correct?
I could see a body, yes.
And I think you indicated the shape of the body.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell if it was female or male,
Nope.
but obviously looked like a human figure.
Yes.
Okay. That drew your attention to the left side of the ambulance as you were approaching, correct?
Yes.
And you're sitting on the right side, which means you're sort of the furthest away from that figure from the perspective of the ambulance.
And the ambulance, yes.
And you had no problem making out that figure in the snow.
So figure in the snow, we had a good distance between the ambulance and the engine, so yes.
Okay. And you indicated that the figure in the snow was on top of the snow, if you will, with some snow accumulating up the body of the individual.
Yes.
But he was not covered in snow.
No.
There wasn't like a mound of snow over this figure.
There were mounds of snow in the area, but not over the patient. Due to the wind, there were snow drifts in the area.
And his clothes were dark as compared to the white snow.
Yes.
I want to ask you a couple of quick questions about some of the last conversation you had with Mr. Lowry about the injuries. You did note that Mr. O'Keefe had a laceration over his right eye, correct?
No, over his right eye.
Over his right eye.
There's a contusion over the eye.
Okay, and your definition of a contusion is,
Bruising.
was it also swollen?
There was swelling around the eyes and a little bit of contusion and bruising around.
Did you see an actively bleeding laceration over his right eye?
I don't recall.
You don't remember that? What about his left eye?
Both eyes were pretty well swollen shut.
What about not from the nostrils, but on the skin on the nose? Did you note a laceration or multiple lacerations on the nose?
So due to the bleeding that was coming from the orifices, trying to clean the area and find exactly where it's from is sometimes difficult. So we can just say it was bleeding in that area.
Okay, so you can't define, as you sit here, you don't remember if it was bleeding from the nostril or from a laceration on the nose?
I believe it was the nostrils.
Okay. Are you saying that there was no laceration on the skin of the nose, or you just don't recall it?
On the top of the nose, no, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
On the top of the nose, I don't recall.
You don't recall. Okay. With regard to his abdomen, you indicated that it was distended,
Yes.
a medical term for swollen.
Yep.
You said that that could be from trauma or it could be just bloating, correct?
Correct.
Did you notice any contusions on his abdomen?
No.
Any skin that was abraded?
No.
Or cut?
No.
So there's no bruising, no contusion, but there was a distension, correct?
Yes.
So there was no visible trauma to the abdomen.
Visible trauma doesn't really matter to internal trauma. It's not always indicative one way or the other.
So my question was, did you see any visible trauma on his abdomen?
No.
Okay. But you did note that it was bloated.
That it was distended, yeah.
Okay. I want to talk to you for a second about, if I could shift gears, about the conversation that you indicated to Mr. Lally that you had with Ms. Reed. You were also asked about that conversation at the grand jury when you testified, correct?
Correct.
You testified that as the lead paramedic, you were specifically trying to get as much information from my client, Ms. Reed, as you possibly could concerning the victim and how the victim ended up being there, correct?
Correct.
You indicated, in no particular order, that you asked questions like, how do you know him, correct?
Correct.
How did he get here?
Correct.
What happened?
Correct.
Is there any additional information you can give me about what happened to this person?
Correct.
Okay, so that was a conversation that you were personally engaged in with my client in order to gather as much data, if you will, about what you were dealing with, correct?
Correct.
But your focus was, when you first arrived, your focus is, I need to attend to the patient, correct?
Correct.
Like, conversations notwithstanding, I need to deal with what's in front of me, which is an unconscious man in the snow.
Correct.
Dressed inappropriately.
Correct.
And possibly freezing to death.
Correct.
But you did say that you had enough of a conversation with Ms. Reed that she answered you and said something to the effect of, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him.
Correct.
So then you followed up on that conversation, correct?
As much as I could, yes.
But in fact, you said that you asked her additional elaborating questions.
Correct.
Well, did you hit him in the face? Or did you kick him? Did you hit him with your hand? Okay. So that's a conversation that you're having with Ms. Reed face to face.
Correct.
You're talking to her, you're looking her in the eyes, she's looking you in the eyes, you're standing still, and you're attempting as best you can to converse with this woman so that you can gather as much information as you possibly can as you attend to the victim.
Correct.
You indicated that that conversation lasted long enough that the conversation was frustrated by the fact that you weren't getting information that was helpful to you. So you turned that conversation over to Katie McLaughlin.
Objection? Sustained. Ask it a different way.
Sure. Did you have, was your conversation in some way in your mind, and when I use the word frustrated, I mean, it was just, you weren't getting the information that you were seeking, correct?
It wasn't productive.
Okay, better way to put it, I'll use your word. That conversation was unproductive enough that you then moved the conversation over to Ms. McLaughlin, correct?
Correct.
Firefighter McLaughlin. And once Firefighter McLaughlin engaged Ms. Reed, you then began to attend to the patient again.
So the patient was already being treated by the other personnel on scene.
Okay.
I started the conversation, realized it wasn't going anywhere. I had other responsibilities. So regardless of how they ended there, they still needed treatment and transport. So that began my priority and moved her over to try and get as much information while treatment was being done.
What part of the treatment were you responsible for?
All of it.
Sorry, that's a great answer to a very vague question.
Yep.
What physically were you doing with Mr. O'Keefe?
In which particular moment?
When you first arrived and attended to him and physically touched him. In other words, were you the airway person? Were you the cardiac person? Were you doing chest compressions? Were you squeezing the bag?
I would have been doing chest compressions initially until I could delegate that task to somebody else.
Okay. And chest compressions, I'm going to butcher this because I've never been trained other than my little toddler. They look a little like what I'm doing now, correct?
Correct.
And I indicated palm over one palm over my hand arms extended, and you can see my shoulders moving up and down in a rhythmic fashion, correct? So if,
I didn't get an answer, correct?
yes. I'll wait till then. What were you wearing?
What are they wearing? My uniform.
Didn't expect that one, did you?
That was a different one. Heavy winter coat,
Okay.
my uniform.
Do paramedics wear sometimes yellow, bright yellow for safety?
Yes.
Were you wearing a bright yellow, heavy winter coat?
I don't recall. I have a few different coats.
Got it. Do you remember what Miss McLaughlin was wearing?
I don't.
Okay. That conversation that you had with Ms. Reed at the scene, that had to have lasted, I'm not guessing it was very long, but it had to have lasted a minute
At most, yeah.
at most. Once you finished your conversation with Ms. Reed, did you then start attending specifically to the chest impressions and the high-level CPR that we've heard so much about from your colleague?
Yes.
As you're doing the CPR on the scene, that high-level CPR, high-quality CPR, was Mr. O'Keefe then moved to the scoop, which would then facilitate getting him on a gurney.
Correct.
That gurney was then moved between a couple of patrol cars, cruisers, and into the ambulance, correct?
Correct.
Once you were in the ambulance, the first priority is to get this person warm. Is that right?
First priority is always going to be CPR. The secondary would be getting them warmed up.
Okay. So obviously, when you got into the ambulance, you would shut the doors.
Correct.
There's a heater on in the ambulance.
Yes.
You never came back out of that ambulance after you got Mr. O'Keefe into the ambulance, did you?
No.
Okay. And you were in there with firefighter Nuttall at the time?
Nuttall and Kelly.
And firefighter McLaughlin was outside the ambulance doing whatever she was doing.
Correct.
Okay.
Initially, and then she came in afterwards to
Obviously.
assist. Yeah.
And did I hear you correctly, when firefighter McLaughlin got in the ambulance, she took over the driving responsibilities?
So there's two different compartments. They're not connected. There's a little window between the two areas. So she assisted with interventions in the back. And then after we had established everything we needed to on scene to begin transport, she then got out and then started driving.
Got it. Thank you. I'd like to play, but first I'd like to have marked, I think it's already been marked, Exhibit 379. It's a video, a snippet of a video. It's probably 3 minutes long. It's not that long. I'd like to play that portion of the video for you. And when it's done, firefighter Nuttall, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong notes, firefighter Flamati, which is not that easy to say.
Did a great job.
I'm going to ask you to show me exactly where on the video, if you can, that you had this conversation
For the laser pointer?
with my client. Yes, you can use the laser pointer as you wish. This is just to orient you, if I may, Your Honor. The top, let me see if I can do this. There we go. The top is a dash cam from one cruiser.
So I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a second, please.
Ooh, she got mad. I hate how she interrupts. Like, I don't know. So apparently, I am pointing. Y'all can't see it. So apparently, this lady right here is the girlfriend of somebody who was supposed to be close to Officer O'Keefe, and then he got in an argument with. He's usually sitting to the left. Hey, Steph. But yeah, like he got really mad with Karen because she didn't tell him personally, I guess, that Officer O'Keefe had died. So, all right, very bad.
For this, until we pause it, I'm going to ask you to focus your attention on the top dash cam video. Go ahead and play that. Can you pause it?
Actually, I need to see counsel at sidebar again.
Y'all. Okay, so let me just go ahead and give the disclaimer. This is the QB thoughts, they're not the thoughts of the Crime Cafe. They're mine alone, not Jenny's. Y'all got it. I feel like maybe the judge and Lally, who's the prosecutor, have like a sign, a signal when he wants a sidebar, because like she just randomly says sidebar. Like it's, I don't know. I feel like they have some kind of signaling going on, because like she's like, oh, this would be a good time to break, and like the judge doesn't normally do that. Normally it's the person questioning is like, hey, I'm gonna have, you know, a lot more testimony, maybe this is a good time to break, blah blah blah. But the judge in this case is like, no, we're gonna break. I don't know, I could be wrong, but anyway, it's so weird, Lauren. It's so weird. This whole thing is weird. This whole thing is weird. And so then I was hearing that, yeah, honey, I'm not a fan. Let me go over and pause this really quick, just in case they come back and I'm talking, because that would be rude. They were saying the other day, you know, there's some judges that won't allow like any emotions in the courtroom. So if the victim's family in the courtroom, they'll say, you know, we're not going to have any outbursts or anything like that. And if you can't control yourself, you have to leave the courtroom. Some judges are like, whatever, it's part of it. So what's interesting is that there's been a lot of emotion in this case, right? And it's a very small courtroom. So everybody can see everybody and their emotion. And so they were like, oh, well, she must be one of those judges that allows emotion. However, in other cases, she has not allowed emotion. She has told the victims or the victim's family that they have to leave the courtroom if they're going to be, you know, crying or anything like that. So I find it interesting that in this case, she's allowing it. So anyways, that's it. Let's see if they're back. Oh Lord, did they take a whole sidebar? Let's see what they did. Here's the key. Sorry, y'all.
What's the session? What's the session?
Okay, yeah. I don't know if they lost their feed or what's going on, but we'll just hang out for a minute. Yeah, the judge's chair is completely annoying. She also has a cup. I'm not sure spins. When I was fast forwarding, I kind of saw that it was dropping out. So yeah, she needs an inhaler. So we'll just kind of hang out here until it comes back on. I'm going to leave it playing so I can tell. Hopefully they won't do the whole I saw Brains video, and I understand now. Okay, see, I'm understanding all the things now. I understand why Jenny can't get to it because the way that you have to toggle back and forth between the tabs, it takes a minute. Yeah, she's Batman. She's huffy and puffy, more so during the defense than that she is the prosecution. Although I have heard her do it during the prosecution. She has a cup, a metal cup that you can hear her. I thought someone was doing dishes, but I think I've determined it's her metal cup. So yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of background noise going on. And I mean, okay, to be fair, we're always complaining about the audio, we can't hear anything. And now we can hear everything. So yeah. Let me kind of move forward and see if back yet. Okay, so we're live. All right. I don't know what happened. They must have lost their feed. Hey, Gail. Yeah, her disgusted. Yeah, it's Vinny was talking about. I don't know if you were in here before when I was talking about it, but I watched a analysis he did. I think after the first day, and he was like, it's really kind of off-putting that she does that, and she only does it during like the defense. So I have heard her do it a little bit during the prosecution as the days have worn on, but yeah, I don't know. So here's another interesting thing. If they start back, I'll pause it. So we were talking about the other day about the objections and how she doesn't allow speaking objections. So a speaking objection would be like objection hearsay, okay? Objection foundation, one of those. And so she doesn't allow that. She just has you say objection and then she rules on it, okay? If she needs anything further, she'll bring you up to the podium, or she'll bring them up to the podium for a sidebar. They'll discuss, and then she'll decide how she's going to rule. So the theory is that if you say objection foundation, objection hearsay, that it can cause bias with the jury or confuse the jury or whatever the case may be. And so that's what she's saying. And there's judges that don't allow speaking objections. There's judges that want the full argument. And like you see in Daybell, they have they'll say, is this judge who refused to? Yes, she is the one that refused to recuse herself. So like you see in Daybell, a lot of times Pryor will get up there and he'll say objection, but he won't say anything else. So he's probably used to someone not allowing a speaking objection. This Judge Boyce in the Daybell trial likes to the judge is the Batman wannabe, Joanna. So Judge Boyce in the Daybell trial, he's like, what's the argument? What's the objection? So he wants them to tell, and then they'll say, oh, can I speak? And so what was interesting, I did an analysis last night, and what was interesting is that so, okay, I think how I want to say this. How I want to explain it. When it comes to an appeal, okay, so let's say she's convicted and they appeal it. When they go to the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court is listening to the trial, they have no basis for what the objection was. I mean, they can allude to the fact that, like, I mean, if it's hearsay, that's pretty obvious. But for them to have to try to overturn it on appeal, they have to try to determine what was the objection and what was her reason for overruling or sustaining the objection. So it leaves a lot to be desired, meaning it's kind of setting it up so that an appeal would be more difficult, is all I'm saying. And I was thinking that, and I think I said that, and then there was like 2 analysis done, and I was like, look at me knowing things, because they both said that. So, yeah. Anyways, Spins, what is your follow-up question, ma'am? You said you have a follow-up question. And yes, Goal said that she would not recuse herself as well. Okay, so this is where I have difficulty, because I don't like there not to be a definitive answer, or a fair answer. So the quick answer to that, Spin, is that, to my understanding, I could be wrong, my understanding is that if the judge says, no, I'm not going to recuse myself, then they continue forward. And then it becomes an appellate issue. So it has to go through the full trial. You have to be found guilty, and then you appeal. It's kind of like what's going on in the Delphi case with Richard Allen. Okay, there's been such a complete bias, and they asked her to recuse herself. She said no, when she threw off the defense, and they went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court put the defense team back on. They also asked her to be removed and a special judge to be appointed, and the Supreme Court was like, yeah, we're not getting involved. So they so now there's nothing that can be done, and it has to be handled on appeal, even though, like, she continually shows a bias in that case. Until the trial is done, they have to they have to wait for appeal. So in Richard Allen's case, it's really scary, because my view is that he may not make it to an appeal. I mean, I'm worried he's not going to make it to trial. So, and yeah, so anyway, that's what I know about that. It has to be. So normally, a judge, if they have a bias, or if they have a conflict or anything like that, and they're asked to recuse themselves, they will recuse themselves. Like, they'll look at it and they'll recuse themselves. What I find interesting in this case is that the word on the crime street is that she only does civil court now. And so, but she adamantly said she was taking this case. She was keeping this case. So I find that interesting. If you're only doing civil court now, why wouldn't you just hand it over? Now, it could be nothing to do with bias. It could just be, it's a big case, and she's towards the end of her career, and she wants to have a big case, and I get that. But if you're biased, you're biased. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're not back. Yeah, it's totally sus. It's completely sus. Um, the police department, again, I'm trying to remain in the middle um, and wait to see what they have. But from what I've seen so far, if they're not crewed up and working together to cover this thing up, bare minimum, they're inept. They're inept. There were so many things that they did not do that should have been done. One of the things earlier was Joanna was talking about um, the footprints and the crime scene tape. And I said, there was no crime scene tape put up. There was footprints around the body, which I mean, there would be footprints around the body even if they put crime scene tape up because they're trying to save a life. But the thing that I found interesting was that one officer said, well, there was no footprints coming from the house. And then also testified that there was 6 inches of snow on top of the body. So, yeah, no, there's no footprints coming from the house because they were probably snowed over, if there were some. That remains to be seen. I don't know that they have anything. I'm gonna need to know why. What's going on? Do we need to go to a different feed? Let's see. Let me try to see if there's another feed. They might have all went on break. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea for a morning break, but I didn't see them or hear them announce that. Um, uh, all right, so I was looking to see if so I have a question for you guys. So there is a hearing, there's a hearing this afternoon in the Koberger trial in the Idaho 4. I'm not sure I'm not sure what it's for, but it starts at 1. So the question is, um, do we want to come back after I get done with PT and we can finish up what we missed in Karen Reed, and then we can listen to the Koberger trial, and then tomorrow we'll play catch up on Daybell, and then if they don't have court for Reed in the afternoon, we can just catch up on everything. So 1 in chat if you want to come back after PT, 2 in chat if we just come back tomorrow. Yeah, Joanna, I think definitely that's what I think. That's what I think. Yeah, I was just going to say that. So Brian Higgins is an officer, and she had I don't know that she actually ever went on a date with him. I know she had kissed him. He was in his car. She had kissed him, and then they were talking, and she had invited him over, and then he said no. But he was present at the party, so there is some talk that maybe there was some contention there, and they started to fight. Not sure. I'll be interested to see what more comes to that. So, I don't know what to do. Yeah, QB at 1.25 speed is kind of hysterical. So do 1 for Roberta today after PT or 2 to just tomorrow. Yeah, so the KISS thing in Aruba, there was nobody, God bless, I cannot even talk. I forgot I can do this. Whoop, look at me. Yeah, so the KISS in Aruba was John with one of the guy's wives, or she wasn't a wife. Her husband had died. He was the godfather of her child. One group says that he was just hugging her, comforting her. One group says that he kissed her. They had a huge fight, but she was not at the party. So that's interesting. But Brian Higgins was. Okay, Henny says come back tomorrow. And if you don't want to do Coburger today, we can come back and do. Okay, everybody says come back tomorrow. Okay, y'all don't care about Coburger? Got you. Oh, Lord.
Why doesn't counsel come to sidebar when the jurors are coming in?
Well, they must be going on break. It would have been nice for them to tell us. All right, well, we'll just come back in the morning. So we're going to watch Daybell in the morning until I guess we can play catch up from today. The other option is I can come back this afternoon and we can play catch up with Daybell, but that's up to y'all. It sounds like y'all got stuffs to do. So we'll just come back tomorrow. They had 2 sidebars and a break, and they still got to have another sidebar? He must have texted her over the break and said, ma'am, I need a sidebar when we come back. Oh, that's the dude. I think that's the dude. Yeah. So this guy right here, dude that was supposedly super close, this guy, this girl who's got RBF is his wife. But this guy is the guy that was supposed to be so close with Officer O'Keefe. And he was big mad because Karen didn't call him when Officer O'Keefe died.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Firefighter Flamati, I want to draw your attention to the top video, and I may pause it and ask you a couple of questions. Let's go. Pause. Did you see a person run into the screen?
Yes.
Run into the frame, rather, from screen left?
Yes.
Who's that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Let's go ahead and play it. And pause. I want to draw your attention to the left side of the top video, did you see somebody wearing a bright yellow jacket?
If you could rewind it, I'd look at that
Why
area.
don't I play it forward?
Okay.
And see if you see that.
Yes.
Pause. And do you recognize that person?
I see a yellow jacket. I can't tell you who it is.
Okay. Based on your memory, have you seen this before, by the way?
No.
Okay. Based on your memory, is that the approximate position that Mr. O'Keefe was in when you or your colleagues made contact?
Approximately, I'd say a little bit more to the left. That would be my guess.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. Pause it. You see the person enter from screen left into the frame.
It looks like a different person, yes?
That person right there. Looks like a long-haired female?
Yeah.
Does that appear to be my client?
From this angle, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. Pause. You see a person wearing yellow right there on the left side of the screen.
If you're telling me that's a person, sure, yes.
No, he's not telling you. So ask the question. If you don't see it, you don't see it. If you do, you do.
I can't tell what that shape is.
Okay. Can you take a look, keep your eyes focused on that and tell me if you see that figure doing anything? Go ahead. Pause it. Okay. Do you recognize that figure now?
I can't recognize the figure, but it looks like an up and down rhythmic motion.
Okay.
That would indicate CPR.
Would that be you?
I couldn't tell you. Is the time accurate? There's 6:13.
I'm just asking you what you recognize on the video.
I couldn't tell you if that was myself or not.
Was there somebody else doing CPR?
Multiple people rotate through CPR, so yes.
Who's responsible for doing the chest compressions?
Whoever's closest to that area, we're all trained for that skill.
Okay, I'm asking in this particular case.
Yes.
I know everybody's trained.
Mhm.
Did you testify earlier that you were the one doing the chest compressions?
I said I was one of them. Yes.
Okay. Does that appear to be you doing the chest compressions?
It could be, I'm not sure.
Okay, let's go and play. Okay, stop it. Do you see the person basically in the middle of the screen there?
Yes,
Does that appear to be my client? Can you tell?
I can tell.
Go ahead and play it. Pause it. You see individuals entering from screen right.
Yes.
Who does that appear to be in the yellow jacket?
That build would have been probably, it could have been firefighter Kelly or it could have been McLaughlin.
Okay, and who's the person trailing the gurney? Right.
I can't tell.
Okay, let's go ahead and play. The person in the hood just obscured that figure. Did you see that figure standing on the other side of the person's hood?
No.
Go ahead and play. Pause it. The activity that's going on just to the sort of left side of the SUV in the frame, can you describe for the jurors what that activity is?
So that would be lowering the stretcher to get ready to load the patient on.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. And now pause it. Now, this person now appears to be facing the camera. Do you now recognize that person?
I don't.
Go ahead. Pause. Can you focus your attention on that individual in the yellow jacket?
Yes.
What does that person seem to be doing?
CPR.
Which part of the CPR?
Chest compressions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
It's okay. Chest compressions.
I want to make sure that Nancy can get down what we're both saying. So which part of the CPR?
Chest compressions.
Thank you. Is that you?
I don't know.
Okay. At this point, you have no idea whether or not you don't remember whether you were the one doing chest compressions when he was moved from the ground to the gurney?
I don't recall.
But you did earlier testify you were doing chest compressions.
I did at some point during this call, yes.
Okay. In the entire length of this video,
Mhm.
did you see anybody else trade off from that person doing chest compressions from the time the person was on the ground to the gurney? Or is that the same person?
It could be the same person. I'm not sure.
Okay. Would you say that's probably you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay, go ahead.
Jurors, disregard that.
Pause it. I want to direct your attention to this person, who appears to be a firefighter in the middle. Do you see that person?
Yes.
Who's that?
Objection, may we?
The objection sustained. I'll see counsel at sidebar.
Ooh, they're in trouble. Oh, look, Karen Reed trying to see what they're saying. she leaning in. She said, "What they saying? What they saying?" I don't know why she has to keep having sidebars. I'm sure she's telling him to stop trying to do stuff that he can't do. But she's also, in my personal opinion, is sustaining objections that are not right. It's kind of like the other day when the medic was on there and he did a scratching motion to his arm when he was describing the scratches, and he said scratches and they said furrows, and they went through the whole My Cousin Vinny thing. And then he said, "Can you redo what you just did?" And she was like, "Nope, we're not doing that. Move on." I'm like, seriously? Anyways, personal opinion. BB disclaimer.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Take a look at the person or the yellow in the middle of the screen. Do you recognize that?
As a fire jacket, and build, I would guess it was either firefighter Kelly or.
So we don't want you to guess.
I would, my best estimation would be firefighter McLaughlin.
Firefighter McLaughlin?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the play. Pause. Recognize the person in the yellow jacket to the right of who you just described as firefighter McLaughlin?
No.
What is that person doing apparently?
My guess would be, I'm sorry,
Not even an estimate. Do you know?
I don't know.
Next question.
Go ahead and play. Okay. Pause. At that point, did you join your colleagues in placing Mr. in the ambulance?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that, did that appear to be you following the gurney in the yellow jacket over to the ambulance?
Yes.
Okay. And who is the lead firefighter? When I say lead, I mean the one to the right, leading the gurney on the front side of the gurney.
I'm not sure.
Okay. One of your colleagues, though.
Yes.
What did you do once you left the frame? Where did you go?
That would have been into the ambulance.
And as you earlier indicated, shut the doors, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you never came back out?
No.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention to the lower video.
Okay.
And we're just gonna let that play for a couple minutes and see if you recognize anything. I'll ask you to pause it in just a second. Awesome. I'm gonna ask you to look up to the top video. You see what appears to be a person wearing yellow to the right?
Yes.
But that's who that is.
No.
Go ahead. Awesome. Looking at the lower video, do you see what appears to be a vehicle in the middle of the screen?
Yes.
What is that?
That is an ambulance.
Does that appear to be the ambulance that you arrived in?
Yes.
And that's the ambulance that you took Mr. O'Keefe to?
Yes.
Doors are closed?
Yes.
Are you in the ambulance at this point?
I'm not sure.
Well, this was, let me just ask it a different way. This was running continuously.
Yeah.
No pauses. You've already taken Mr. O'Keefe to the ambulance. Would you have gotten in the ambulance?
I don't recall.
Well, I mean, you're not standing outside the ambulance.
So if you know the answer.
I don't know.
Next question.
You have no idea whether you're in the ambulance or not at this point.
At this point, no.
Okay. Would you have gone anyplace else when you left the frame?
Could have been to gather equipment, but for certain, I don't know.
Where would Mr. O'Keefe have been?
Been in the ambulance? Again, don't know for certain.
Could have been or was in the ambulance?
At this time, I don't know.
Okay, let's go to the phone. Stop. Okay, taking a look at both screens, you see the group of people, including the individual with the yellow jacket at the bottom screen,
Yes.
that appear to be the same from a different angle, same group of people, including the person with the yellow jacket on the top screen.
Yes.
Who was the person that was directed to get the medical history from my client?
McLaughlin?
You believe that's Ms. McLaughlin?
No.
You don't think that's her?
I'd have to rewind to know where she went.
Well, let me ask you a couple of other questions. Looking at the bottom screen, you see a police officer?
Yes.
You see a woman with long hair standing next to the police officer? That appeared to be my client.
Yes.
There's an individual with a fire jacket on, right?
Yes.
And she was, Ms. McLaughlin was directed to get medical history and interview my client, correct?
Yes.
Does that appear to be what she's doing right there?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
At this point, where do you believe you were now?
I don't remember.
Think you might have been in the ambulance?
I don't remember.
You testified earlier, and this has been a continuously running video on the top, testified earlier that when you left the screen with that gurney, you got in the ambulance, correct?
We headed that way, yes.
So firefighter Flamati, it's not a trick question. Where did you go when you left the screen?
It would have been to either gather equipment or to put the patient in the ambulance.
Okay, when did what equipment did you need to gather?
It would have been anything that was left by the patient's side, whether it was a first-in bag, airway bag, any other equipment, basically.
You were doing chest compressions.
I didn't state that.
You didn't say that?
I said I did chest compressions at some point. I didn't say I did them continuously throughout the call.
So you just put John O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance and went to look for some equipment?
Not what I said. So chest compressions were done continually throughout, whether they were done by me or by another provider. I can't tell you specifically.
So when you left the screen and John O'Keefe is on the gurney, you're engaged in vital, life-saving a vital life-saving endeavor, correct?
Yes,
That had to have been your focus, correct?
that was at the time, yes.
And you wanted to get him out of the cold, the weather,
Yes,
because it was inclement, it was freezing out, correct?
yes,
So you wanted to put him in the ambulance, right? And you wanted to continue CPR because in your words, you testified on direct examination, you believed that there might be some viability left.
yes,
So CPR and life-saving measures were absolutely vital at that point.
yes,
You didn't go find equipment, you got in the ambulance, didn't you?
yes,
So at this point, you're in the ambulance, correct?
at this point, I don't know.
You indicated you never got back out of the ambulance after you got in, correct?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you see any place in that video where you had any sort of detailed conversation with my client?
No,
Did you see any place in that video where you engaged my client and said, how'd you get here? What happened? And she said, I hit him. And you said, how'd you hit him? All the stuff that you testified earlier to.
I didn't see that in the video, no.
You indicated in a police report during an interview that you had with Yuri Butnik on February 8th. That my client said, I hit him, correct?
Correct.
You remember having that conversation with Sergeant Butnik?
I don't recall the conversation, but I'm trusting that your records are accurate.
Is it true that during that conversation, you indicated to Sergeant Butnik that, quote, Katie spoke with Karen Reed. Katie is Katie who?
McLaughlin.
Katie spoke with Karen Reed, collecting medical history for the victim, and was also told by Karen that the last time she saw the victim was at 1 a.m. that morning. That is when Anthony, who's Anthony?
Would have been myself.
That is when Anthony heard Karen say, I hit him, I hit him. Is that what you told Sergeant Butnik?
I don't recall.
Does it appear that this is the time, firefighter Flamani, that Katie McLaughlin is getting a medical history from my client, or attempting to?
I can't tell from the video, no.
You do know, however, that during this time, you're in an ambulance, probably 30 or 40 feet away, with the doors closed.
I don't know.
Well, you certainly don't see yourself in that frame, do you?
Doesn't appear to be, no.
Good. If we're done with the videos, can we take it down, please?
Of course. Yes, I think we are finished. Thank you, Your Honor. You were the lead firefighter on that team that night, correct?
Lead paramedic.
Lead paramedic, thank you. You understood, obviously, the gravity of hearing a statement like, I hit him, some sort of an explanation about what may have happened to the victim, correct?
Correct.
That statement could potentially have direct relationship to, or a direct relational impact on how life-saving measures are done by the medical personnel that you turn the victim over to.
Correct.
You testified at the grand jury that you wanted, once you got to the hospital, you wanted to be as quote unquote helpful as possible when you handed over the patient, correct?
Correct.
You said you actually stayed at Good Samaritan for an additional 10 to 20 minutes, which is your habit in cases like this, because you wanted to be quote unquote an asset to the medical intervention team, correct? Correct. That team includes the doctors and nurses that were trying to provide life-saving services to Mr. Oakey.
Correct.
But you never relayed to a single doctor or a single nurse a single word about a woman who said, I hit him, did you?
Documentation for us ends at transfer of patient care. As far as my memory, I do remember relaying that information to the doctors and nurses.
You do?
Yes.
Have you ever testified about that ever previous
Never.
to this?
Never been asked about that.
Oh, nobody ever asked you, so you didn't tell anybody?
In the court setting? No.
Testified in front of a grand jury, didn't you?
Yes.
Shalali asked you a bunch of questions. During the course of that conversation that was under oath, did you ever disclose that you told the doctors and the nurses that you heard a woman say, "I hit him"?
I recall telling the doctors and nurses that there's a question of that the patient was hit by a vehicle or we don't know, is what I directly said to the doctors and nurses.
You directly told the doctors and nurses that there was a question about whether or not he was hit by a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Have you ever said that in any context, either to the police or in a grand jury before today?
I don't recall.
You were asked a bunch of questions yesterday, the day before yesterday, and this morning by Mr. Lally.
Yes.
Did you say it on your direct examination?
I wasn't asked that question.
So since Mr. Lally didn't ask you, you just left it out that you told the doctors, the medical professionals, that in fact, you described that this patient was likely hit by a car.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You wrote a report as well, correct?
Yes.
We talked a little bit about that report. There's an area in the report for a narrative
Yes.
about your observations, your experiences with this patient, correct?
Correct.
Your job as a lead paramedic is to be as detailed as possible, correct?
Correct.
You want to provide and impart the most detail you possibly can about an incident to assist in medical intervention, correct?
Correct.
Take a look at page 3 of 5 of your report.
Yes,
You see that narrative area?
I do.
Can you point to that portion of your report where you indicate that my client said the words, "I hit him"?
It doesn't say that.
Can you point to your report, the portion of your report where you indicate that you told the doctors and nurses that she said, "I hit him"?
Doesn't say that.
Can you point to that portion of your report where you indicate that your concern for the patient was that he had been hit by a car?
Doesn't say that.
You indicated on direct examination that you were, quote unquote, looking for anything that we could pass on to the emergency room that would assist.
Yes.
I think it might have been an assistance to the emergency room personnel to indicate that you believe this person had been hit by a car.
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you believe that that would have been an important piece of information to pass on to the emergency room assistants?
Objection.
I'll let him have that.
Thanks. It would have been important, yes.
And it's nowhere in your reports, correct?
It's not in the reports, no.
You didn't tell that to the police when you were interviewed 8 days later.
I was not asked about how or what I was.
My question is,
Yes.
did you tell the police 8 days later, or 9 days later when you were interviewed? And you didn't tell the grand jury that, correct?
No.
And you didn't mention that on direct examination in front of these jurors, did you?
No.
Have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Lally.
So Firefighter Famani, you had been asked some questions about the observation you made of Mr. O'Keefe's abdomen being distended. And absent any external observation of injuries, that could be from an internal injury cause. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, the conversation that you were talking about in which the defendant indicated to you repeatedly that she hit him or I hit him, that occurred on your sort of way to the body, correct?
Correct.
Now, turning back to sort of when you're coming to the scene and arriving at the scene, you've got a call or dispatch in regard to an unresponsive male in the snow, correct? Correct. So you know that going there, correct? Correct. And where you sort of bring the ambulance to a stop, there are other vehicles already in that area where Mr. O'Keefe is, correct? Correct. And it's from that vantage point that you're able to then see Mr. O'Keefe's body off the side of the road about 10 feet or so into the lawn. Correct. Now, when it comes to chest compressions, your department, any department, as far as sort of the medical field that you're in, is there any sort of policy or protocol for how long one person should be doing those at a time?
So recommendation is always 2 minutes, but it's usually based on the fatigue of the provider. But really the most important thing is just quality of CPR and making sure that they have the best CPR throughout, regardless of fatigue.
So it's not recommended that one person do continuous chest compressions for 15 or 20 minutes, correct?
It's actually recommended not.
And so that would be sort of, when you have that many sort of assets with you on a scene, would it be typical for somebody to continue on with chest compressions for that long period of time? Those videos that you were showing up on the screen, have you ever seen either of those videos?
No.
So you have no idea as far as the times, whether they're accurate, correct?
No clue.
And whether the videos are synchronous, you have no idea about that either, correct?
No.
The conversation in which you heard the defendant say, "I hit him," and the conversation that firefighter McLaughlin had in which the defendant told her, "I hit him," those are two separate conversations, correct?
Correct.
Happened at two different times, two different locations, and you weren't even present for Ms. McLaughlin's statement, correct?
Correct.
And you did, when you were interviewed by the trooper and when you testified before the grand jury, you indicated in both instances that the defendant said to you, "I hit him," repeatedly, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you were asked questions about what you relayed to the hospital staff, that what you're testifying to, that's your memory of what you told the hospital, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated in that you had said something to the effect of, there's a question about whether or not Mr. O'Keefe had been hit by a car, correct?
Correct.
And so from your conversations with the defendants and the sort of expounding questions that you would ask for clarification, why was it that you related motor vehicle sort of specifically as a question to the hospital staff?
So it was due to the proximity of the patient to the roadway and the vagueness of the statement. So proximity to the roadway and the fact that she stated, "I hit him," the red flag of him being underdressed and not, people don't just lie down in the snow in a blizzard. So how he got there, we're not sure. So we're trying to figure out what happened, but due to the proximity of the roadway, that was our first inclination.
I have nothing further.
All right,
May I, Your Honor?
a couple of questions.
You indicated that it's not recommended that someone do chest compressions for 15 or 20 minutes.
Correct.
You saw the video. It was on screen. That video was about 3 minutes.
Yes.
Did it appear that the same person that was doing chest compressions at the beginning of the video continued doing chest compressions all the way through?
I don't know.
We just watched the video.
I can't tell you for certain which personnel. We all have yellow coats, so I can't tell you if somebody swapped. I don't know.
Did it appear to you in watching that video that the person that started on the chest compressions on the left side of the screen continued all the way through up to the scoop, up to the gurney, and off screen doing chest compressions?
Objection.
Sustained.
You indicated that when you heard this phrase, "I hit him," that your response was, did you hit him with your hand, right?
Yes.
Did you kick him?
Yes.
Did you punch him?
Yes.
That's what you previously testified to, correct?
Yes.
Nowhere in there nowhere in that conversation did you ever suggest that you hit him with your car.
I don't recall if I asked her specifically about that.
So now you don't recall about that either.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
And for the first time in any forum, you're telling this jury that you then thought, based on that conversation that was attendant to the video that we just watched, you believed that Mr. O'Keefe had been hit by a car and that she said she did it.
I did not say that. So what, am I allowed to respond?
Yes.
So I left it open-ended to the staff of the hospital that these are both possibilities of what happened to the patient.
And of course, if you had said that to the staff of the hospital, the staff of the hospital would certainly put it in some of the medical reports, correct?
They don't have to. It's really up to them.
And you're aware that none of those have that statement.
I'm not aware.
All set? All right, you are all set, firefighter Flamati, or paramedic Flamati. Thank you. Who is your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Mr. Matthew Kelly.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I approach just to retrieve the exhibit?
Sure.
I think is appropriate.
Y'all. Okay. All right. Two things. One, if anybody at any time ever said to anybody that this man was hit about his head and neck or by a vehicle or whatever, whether it be medic Flamati, whether it be the hospital staff, whatever, it would have been noted. You don't not note that. You don't not note that. You have to, if you are aware of a mechanism of injury, you absolutely have to note it. And also when you do your handoff at the hospital. Now me, I'm like really like super detailed, but when you do your handoff at the hospital, you notate what you told them in your report and who you gave the patient to, because you don't want there to be any chance that somebody says you just dumped the patient, that you didn't give report, that you abandoned the patient. So what I don't get is the medics have no dog in this fight. Okay, they're not liable for anything. Okay, they did everything that they were supposed to do to try to help this man survive. Okay, so why would they lie about what they heard? I don't understand it. And it's clear to me, at least from the testimony, it's clear to me that they've been lying. They either lied to the grand jury or they're lying now, one or the other. So I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know why you would put your reputation on the line like that. I mean, unless they just thought it was, I don't know if the prosecution just thought this was cut and dry, but this is craziness. This is craziness to me. I don't know how about what y'all think, but to me, especially with my experience, yeah, and he's right. I mean, like they recommend every 2 minutes. It's not always, you're not always able to do that. But what happens is you rotate. Okay, so if someone's holding C-spine, like let's say, okay, theoretically, one person should have been holding C-spine because they don't know the mechanism of injury. One person should have been doing the BVM, which is the bag valve mask, which is breathing for them. One person should have been doing compressions. Okay. At some point, they would have had somebody hook up the AED, depending on, how many people on hand. And usually, if you have enough hands, the lead medic is coordinating everything. Okay. So that's probably why in that moment, he was not doing compressions. The firefighter was doing compressions, because that's something, and I'm not belittling anything, because I was a firefighter, I'm an EMT now, and I was a medic. I'm not belittling anything, but as a first responder, you can do CPR, okay? And you can do good CPR, okay? And that leaves the medics open to be able to do meds, to interpret, EKGs, it's a 12 lead, it's not a true EKG, to do all these other things. Okay. So that guy knew that firefighter was doing compressions. It was clear on that video that they did not swap off. Okay. When I was talking about the swap, usually if someone's doing compressions, they'll round robin. So, the person doing compressions will go to the right. Maybe the person who is holding C-spine will hand it over to the person that was doing. I mean, it's a dance. It's a dance because you never want anything to stop. So maybe the person is not doing the BVM at the moment. So they'll take the person doing the BVM, will hand it to the person who was doing compressions, and they'll round robin to holding C-spine. And C-spine will round robin to doing compressions, and they'll go that way. But there was no switch off. You could see there was no switch off. And you don't have to do it at 2 minutes. As long as the person doing compressions is not fatigued and you're doing high quality CPR, you don't have to switch off. So I don't know. I don't get the reason for the lies. And if they were coached by the, and I'm not saying they lied, I'm just saying it has the appearance of a lie. It's lie adjacent. It's a whole lie adjacent. Anyways, we'll get back to it. Sorry, I don't mean to, but these are just things that I know, and I am not buying any of that. Not buying any of that. So let me restart it.
Step up there, just watch your step father. You solemnly swear the evidence given to the court and jury in the case now and hearing true the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Morning.
Morning.
So you consider stand however you're comfortable. Just bring. Perfect. Thank you. All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sure. Matthew Kelly, Kelly.
And what is it that you do for work, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic for Canton Fire.
And how long have you been a firefighter paramedic with Canton Fire?
Approximately 2.5 years.
And prior to working for the Canton Fire Department, what, if any, other employment did you have within that sort of field?
I worked for a private ambulance, first ambulance service for approximately 5 months.
And sort of geographically, where was that located?
Boston area.
Now, prior to you working as an EMT or a paramedic, you worked as an EMT before working as a paramedic?
Correct.
Okay. And so prior to working as either an EMT or a paramedic, did you have any sort of training or did you receive any sort of certification in regard to being an EMT paramedic?
Yeah, so I had to do a 6-month EMT course, and then I had to do a practical and written exam for the course, and then for the state to get my EMT. And then for a paramedic school, it was about a 10 to 12 month didactic portion. And then I did I believe it was 200 hours clinical in the hospitals. And then I did 300 hours ride time. And then I had to do a practical and written exam for the course and also for the state. And now with Canton Fire, I'm getting precepted as a paramedic.
And when you use that term as far as precepted, what exactly does that term mean within your?
It just means that you get trained by an experienced paramedic for an extended period of time until they say that you can do the job on your own.
And with regard to being a EMT and a paramedic, you receive a certification in regard to working within that field?
Can you say that again?
With regard to being an EMT and a paramedic, to receive some sort of certification, either from the state or some other body in regard to working in that field?
Yes.
You have certification in regard to both?
Yes.
And is that certification up to date?
Yes, it is.
Sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, the evening of that into January 29th, 2022. Were you working with the Canton Fire Department that day?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall what kind of shift you were working on that day?
24-hour shift on the ambulance.
And which station house were you assigned to on that day?
Station 1,
And that's located where within the town of Canton?
99 Revere Street.
And you were assigned to the ambulance, is that correct?
Correct.
And who, if anyone else from your department, was assigned to the ambulance along with you?
Paramedic Anthony Fulmati.
And on that morning of January 29th, do you recall about what time that you woke up on that day?
I believe it was about 4:45 a.m.
When you woke up, what, if anything, is it that you did with regard to your duties and responsibilities around fire station house one?
So we woke up a little bit early to shovel off the apron, shovel off the parking lot, and just prepare for the new shift coming in.
And just briefly, sir, like, so when you go outside to shovel, what, if anything, do you recall about sort of the weather conditions and what they were at that point?
There was snow on the ground. It was snowing, high winds, low visibility, still dark out.
And do you recall being dispatched to a call shortly after 6 a.m.?
Yes, I do.
And what was that call, or what was that dispatch in regard to, and where specifically were you dispatched?
It was unresponsive male in the snow on Fairview Road.
And that area of Fairview Road, through your work with the Canton Fire Department, are you familiar with that specific area?
Yes.
And you respond in the ambulance, is that correct?
Correct.
Who, if anyone, goes along in the ambulance with you?
Fulmati was in the passenger seat, and then paramedic Tim Nuttall was in the back.
And who was driving?
I was driving.
And in addition to the ambulance, ambulance one that you were in, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatus responded from your station to Fairview Road?
We also had an engine and our shift commander SUV.
If you recall, who was the shift commander in the SUV?
Shift commander was Captain Wendell Robery at the time.
And Captain Robery is now the chief of the Canton Fire, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as the engine was concerned, who, if anyone, was assigned to the engine and responded to the call as well?
It was Lieutenant Greg Woodbury, firefighter, paramedic Katie McLaughlin, and firefighter, paramedic Frank Walsh.
And as you're driving from the station house to Fairview, what, if anything, do you recall about weather conditions, visibility, anything like that along the way?
Just heavy snow and wind, real low visibility, good amount of snow on the ground, so I was just trying to take it slow so we didn't spin out or drift or anything like that.
And can you describe for the jury sort of the route that you took from the station on Revere Street to Fairview Road that morning?
Yep, we took a right onto Revere Street, left onto Sherman Street, right onto Chapman Street, and then a left onto Fairview.
And as you're driving down Fairview, what, if anything, can you tell the jury about sort of the elevation of that roadway as you go from Chapman down to where you stopped?
It was a pretty steep, long road downhill. It was probably downhill for half of the way through Fairview. And because of that, I was just trying to go real slow so we didn't drift down the hill.
And one last question about driving, but as you're driving along, what, if anything, else did you observe as far as sort of other vehicular traffic on the roadway, any other cars, trucks, anything like that?
Nothing until I saw the police cruiser at the scene.
And so as you're approaching the scene and you're driving towards it, what, if anything, sort of first draws your attention to where you're going and where you stop?
So it was just real low visibility, but we could see blue lights at the time. So just kept going towards the blue lights and knew that it would be in that area.
Now, Where do you stop in relation to the cruiser?
I believe they were facing towards us, so we would be in front of them.
And at some point, you're being dispatched for an unresponsive male party, correct?
Correct.
And so when you're pulling up to the scene, you see the cruiser, are you able to also see any sort of unresponsive male party?
Not when I'm in the truck. I had to get out of the truck to see.
And when was it and how far away from it were you at the first time that you observed the unresponsive male?
Once I got out of the truck, I was probably had to be about like 5 feet away until I could see the victim.
And at this time when you're arriving, sometime shortly after 6 a.m., is it light out, dark out, or something?
It's dark.
And just so we can stop saying unresponsive male, at some point you identified who the patient was that you eventually treated and transported. And who did you identify?
Mr. O'Keefe.
John O'Keefe, is that correct?
Correct.
So you get out of the vehicle. You all get out at the same time, is that correct?
Relatively, yeah.
And where is it that you, firefighter Famati and firefighter Nuttall, go?
So we first go to pick up some of the bags and stuff that we would need to conduct a arrest, and then we just go straight over to the body and some people that were around there.
And with regard to the bags that you retrieved, what kind of bags are we talking?
We'd take like a first-in bag that has miscellaneous stuff. We'd take an airway bag, and we would take a cardiac monitor.
And you indicate, as far as where Mr. O'Keefe was, who, if anyone else, or what, if any other people were in that same area?
Can you say that one more time?
When you first go over to where Mr. O'Keefe is,
Mm-hmm.
who, if anyone, or how many other people are in that general area? When you
Sure. I remember seeing a police officer and 2 women.
And as far as where Mr. O'Keefe was, first of all, how was he positioned in relation to the ground?
He was on his back, probably about around a fire hydrant, probably about 5 or so feet from what I saw would be the street.
So you believed about 5 or so feet in from the road, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe, when you first come over, what, if anything, did you observe as far as snow on him or around him or in the area where
I don't really recall.
you recall how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed when you first get over there?
I believe he was wearing a hoodie, like a sweatshirt and jeans, and remember he had one shoe on, but forget which shoe it was.
You don't recall which shoe it was, but there was one shoe on his foot at that point?
Correct.
And when you first arrive at this patient, at Mr. O'Keefe, what is it that you and the other firefighters are doing in regard to treatment at that?
So the other firefighters were checking for a pulse. And then after that, I was getting some of the supplies, and then we would start compressions and start moving them into the ambulance so we could get a better look at them and what we were doing.
When you say start compressions, what kind of compressions are you referring to?
CPR.
Chest compressions?
Yes.
Correct. And based on your training experience, is there some sort of protocol as to how long one individual should be doing chest compressions?
So we want early and continuous chest compressions for as long as the person is pulseless. We will take breaks in order to check for a pulse and check for any rhythm changes.
And so when breaks are taken, is that one person that's doing those same compressions the entire time, or is it switched off or something else?
We try to switch off every few minutes.
Now, when you first approach where Mr. O'Keefe is on the ground, what, if any, sort of injuries, if at all, did you observe on Mr. O'Keefe at that time?
On the ground, I didn't observe any injuries or recall seeing any injuries at the time. It wasn't until got him in the ambulance that I saw some injuries.
And so from that sort of initial assessment and initial sort of treatment of the patients, what exactly does that sort of assessment and treatment consist of when Mr. O'Keefe is on the ground?
Basically just checking for breathing and if he has a pulse. It was pretty dark and very low visibility, so we wanted to get him out of the conditions and into the ambulance to kind of further assess them.
And from your sort of initial assessment, did he have a pulse and was he breathing?
No.
And so want to get him out of the conditions, and how was that accomplished?
I believe we used a scoop board or a scoop stretcher. It's just a backboard that breaks into two pieces that you can slide underneath the victim or the patient. We used that, and then we had picked him up and put him onto our actual EMS stretcher, and then just put the stretcher into the ambulance.
And where was the stretcher sort of placed in regard to where, or in relation to where Mr. O'Keefe was 5 feet off the road?
I don't recall.
Now, once you get to the ambulance, what, if any, difference did you notice between sort of the lighting in the ambulance versus the lighting outside on the lawn?
So there was very low visibility outside. There was great visibility inside with the lighting all around the back of the ambulance.
And so once you're in the back of the ambulance, what, if anything, did you observe or note at that point in regard to any injuries you observed in Mr. O'Keefe?
He had like a swollen black and blue right eye, and he had some blood around his mouth.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, during treatment, you're touching or making contact with Mr. O'Keefe's body, correct?
Correct.
And during the course of that, what, if any, observations or what, if anything, did you note in regard to sort of tactile observations of Mr. O'Keefe?
He was very cold to touch, very stiff, almost frozen-like. Yes.
Now, at some point during the course of your treatment in the back of the ambulance, are his clothes removed?
Yes.
Why is that?
It's just so we can try to examine his full body for any other injuries.
And there's some concern for cardiac arrest, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain, are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what your understanding based on your training experience is as what is cardiac arrest?
Sure. It would be when a person has a lethal cardiac rhythm where they no longer have a pulse.
Now, once the clothes, as far as being removed, how are they physically, sort of, how are they removed?
I believe they were probably cut off with trauma shears.
And once the clothes are removed with trauma shears, what, if any, additional observations did you make of injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's body?
There was some lacerations on his right upper extremity.
Now, the chest compressions that you were talking about, was that continuous sort of throughout the patient care with respect to Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And in addition to that, what, if anything, was done with respect to body temperature for Mr. O'Keefe once in the back of the ambulance?
So we did some rewarming. So we did heat blankets and warm fluids.
And as the chest compressions continue in the back of the ambulance, what, if anything, did you observe with regard to Mr. O'Keefe's nose or mouth?
I remember that there was some blood or vomit or bile coming out of his mouth.
Now, turning your attention to back outside of the ambulance, taking you back there for a moment. You indicated in your testimony that when you arrived there were two females in the area where Mr. O'Keefe was. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you describe anything as far as what they look like or anything about those two females that you saw?
I just remember they were white, looked to be between 35 and 45 years old, I would say. and average build and height.
What, if any, sort of distinguishing characteristics did you observe between one of the other?
I remember one had some red stuff around her mouth. I was thinking it could be blood.
And that individual that you observed with red stuff that you thought could be blood around her mouth, what, if any, observations did you make of her as far as her demeanor or anything like that?
She was just acting kind of erratic and kind of running around screaming different things.
And as far as the different things that she was screaming, what, if anything, do you recall specifically hearing her screaming when she was running around?
It was just something like, "He's dead. He's fucking dead."
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
At least twice.
As far as that sort of phraseology, was that consistent throughout?
I would say so, yes.
Now, when you enter the ambulance, does the patient care continue, obviously, with Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And if you recall, who was sort of involved in that patient care in the back of the ambulance?
Me, Nuttall, Flamati, Woodbury, Walsh, and McLaughlin came in a little bit later. I'm not sure if she did any patient care or not.
So the majority of the people from your department that responded to the scene at one point or another were involved in patient care with regard to Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
Now, you drove the ambulance to Fairview, is that correct?
Correct.
And so for the transport from Fairview, what hospital did you go to?
Good Samaritan.
So for transport from Fairview to Good Samaritan, who drove the ambulance then?
McLaughlin.
And so firefighter McLaughlin's driving, where are you located within the ambulance?
I was in the back with Nuttall and Flamati.
Do you recall sort of specifically what, if anything, you were doing with regard to patient care during the transport phase?
So I was just helping them transport phase. I was doing compressions before, but we had switched them over to a automatic compression device. So I was just involved in helping ventilate and suction.
And was there who, if anyone else in the back of the ambulance was also sort of working on the airway portion, do you recall?
We've Nuttall, and I forget who else.
Now, during the course of transport from the scene when you arrived to Good Samaritan, what, if any, change did you note in reference to Mr. O'Keefe as far as heart activity, respiratory, anything of like?
No changes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for exhibit number 9, please. Firefighter Kelly, I'm just directing your attention to the screen and what's been marked as exhibit number 9. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
The location of the scene.
For the house that you responded to on January 29th, is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could also have exhibit number 18. And again, sir, just directing your attention to the screen, do you recognize the photograph that's up on the screen?
Yes.
What's depicted in that photograph?
The location of the scene, again.
Sort of a different view of the same home, is that correct?
Correct.
May I approach the witness, Sean?
Yes.
This is the laser pointer, basically there's a button there, just press on that.
Okay.
Firefighter Kelly, with using that laser pointer that you have now before you, if you could, please direct the jury's attention on the screen to whereabouts you located Mr. O'Keefe in that supine position when you first arrived.
It was about this area right here.
Thank you. I have nothing further to this witness.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, may we approach for a minute?
Okay. Jurors, remember, you can stand up and stretch anytime I go to someone.
Y'all take a stretch break. Stand up, move your body. Drink your water. I guess he wants to make sure that she don't cut him off while he's questioning the dude. Also, QB at 1.75 speed is probably more than my brain could handle. Yeah. So, let's see.
Good morning, sir. Mr. Kelly, you and I have never met before, correct?
Correct.
We've never had a conversation
Correct.
in or out of court.
Correct.
Now, with regard to the clothing that John O'Keefe was wearing when you came upon him, I believe you remembered that he had on a pair of jeans.
To the best of my recollection, yes.
And you remembered that he had a hoodie sweatshirt.
Yes.
And what also stuck out in your mind is that he had only one shoe on, correct?
Correct.
From your memory, you're not sure if it was the left or the right shoe, but it was one of those, correct?
Correct.
And you did not see another shoe or the matching shoe in the area anywhere around where he was lying, correct?
Correct.
And to your memory, you never saw that other shoe, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to the removal of the clothing, I believe you testified before this jury on direct examination that trauma shears would have been used. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what do those look like? How big are they? And if you could describe them.
They're about this big, so say 6 inches, and they have usually like a plastic or metal handle, and then just kind of 2 curved blades that are used to cut.
And are they essentially a large pair of scissors?
Yes.
And are they sharp in terms of the blades?
Yes.
And they need to be somewhat heavy duty because you don't know what type of clothing you're going to have to cut through, correct?
Correct.
Where was it that the trauma shears were used in order to start to remove John O'Keefe's clothing that morning?
I don't recall.
Do you recall if it was before he was put into the ambulance, during the ambulance ride, or after he was at the hospital?
I believe it would, I don't recall, but I believe it would be in the ambulance.
I'm sorry, there's a little bit of noise. Could you repeat that?
Sure. I don't recall, but I believe it would be in the ambulance.
In the ambulance. And you wouldn't have waited until you got to the hospital because there was a reason why you were taking the clothes off, correct?
Correct.
And what was that reason?
To look for any other injuries that the patient might have.
And that was a priority as you were treating him, correct?
Correct.
You don't think that you cut off his clothes before you put him in the ambulance, correct?
Correct.
And you don't think that, and when I say you, I mean your team.
Right.
You don't think your team cut off the clothes after he was out of the ambulance, correct?
Correct.
So it was sometime during the ride.
Correct.
Do you recall who it was that actually used the trauma shears along that ride?
No.
Do you recall at what point during the ride? Would it have been sort of the beginning of the ride, or would it have been toward the end?
Toward the beginning.
Now, with regard to the clothing that was cut, do you recall if it was the sweatshirt, the jeans, or both?
I don't recall.
Do you think, or is your memory that the hoodie sweatshirt was left on him without being cut?
I don't recall.
Where did that clothing go after it was cut by the trauma shears during that ride?
Some of it would stay right on the stretcher, but I don't recall on all of it.
Okay. And some of it could have been on the floor of the ambulance as well?
Potentially.
And then once the ambulance arrives at the hospital, what is the protocol regarding the clothing that had been cut?
It gets transferred over to the RN in charge of the patient and usually stays in their room. Usually they'll put it in some sort of bag.
Okay. And is the clothing put in the bag? Does somebody meet you out at the ambulance in order to collect the clothing, or do you bring the clothing into the hospital in order to transfer it to an RN?
We bring it in.
And do you recall who it was that brought in that clothing?
No.
Who was with you at that time going into the hospital from the ambulance?
Nuttall and Flamati.
So it had to be one of the three of you that delivered that clothing to an RN, correct?
Correct.
Do you know if all the clothing was delivered to an RN or if some stayed in the ambulance?
I don't recall.
And once you give the clothing to the RN, do you see where she takes it?
I don't recall.
Did you go into the treatment room wherever John O'Keefe was brought once he was at the hospital?
Yes.
And you had previously testified that you believed the clothing would have been brought in with him, correct?
Correct.
Do you have a memory of seeing that clothing within that treatment room at the hospital?
I don't recall.
Do you recall seeing the clothing on the floor?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now let's get back to when you first arrived on scene. And actually, but before I get to that, I did want to ask you a couple of questions about where you were at in terms of your career on January 28th, 29th. You were a fairly new firefighter?
Correct.
And you were conscious, you had been trained not long before January 29th, right? It was within several months?
2 months, yeah.
Oh, within 2 months, okay. And your priority as a new firefighter was to follow your training, correct?
Correct.
It was fresh in your mind.
Correct.
You wanted to do things the right way, correct?
Correct.
And particularly at the beginning of your career, you don't want to develop any bad habits, correct?
Correct.
And you were following protocol once you got to the scene as best you could, correct?
Correct.
I believe you testified on direct examination that when the ambulance got to 34 Fairview, as soon as it was parked, you and Anthony Flamati went straight to the body, correct?
I don't recall saying that. I wasn't sure who went straight to the body. I said some of us got some supplies.
Okay. I thought your testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought your testimony was that you may have gotten some supplies, but then you and Flamati went straight to the body.
Yes, so we did, me and Nuttall.
Got supplies?
Me and Nuttall went to the body.
All right, where was?
But we didn't go straight there. We got supplies first and then went to the body, or I got supplies first and then went to the body.
Okay. How long did it take you to get supplies?
Probably within a minute, I would say.
Okay. And where was Flamati when you were getting the supplies?
I don't recall.
Once you got to the body, who assisted you with regard to treating John O'Keefe?
I believe it would be the people who were on scene with me.
Who would that have been?
Flamati, Nuttall, Walsh, McLaughlin, Woodbury, and Robery.
Okay. So is it your testimony that your memory is that 5, 6, however many people were there with you, all were hovered over John O'Keefe doing treatment on him?
Not treatment, but getting supplies, getting the stretcher. We're all working together, but we weren't all the treatment portion.
Sure, and the treatment was essentially CPR, correct?
Correct.
Chest compressions,
Yes.
and dealing with his airway as well?
Correct.
Which of your coworkers and/or you were directly involved with the CPR, the chest compressions, and the airway issues?
I recall that I was doing compressions and helping suction and ventilate in the ambulance, but I do not recall who else was partaking in that.
Okay. So let's talk about when John O'Keefe was put on the scoop stretcher and then ultimately taken to the ambulance. Who was with you when that was occurring?
So it would have been me, Nuttall, Flamati, and Robery, I believe, were trying to get him on the scoop. And then I believe the engine guys were trying to get the stretcher.
Who are the engine guys?
That would be Walsh. It must have been Walsh, Woodbury, and McLaughlin, but I don't recall who exactly was getting it.
All right, so your memory is that yourself, Nuttall, and Flamati were loading John O'Keefe onto the scoop?
I believe so, yeah.
And then from the scoop, he's put on a stretcher?
Correct.
And then who would it have been that wheeled the stretcher to the ambulance?
I don't recall who it was.
You?
I don't recall.
So you have no memory of who would have taken John O'Keefe on that stretcher into the back of the ambulance?
I don't recall who actually did it, but it would just be whoever's in the best location at the time to move the stretcher.
All right. Do you have a memory of John O'Keefe going into the back of the ambulance?
Not a clear memory, no.
Who went into the ambulance with him?
Me, Nuttall, Flamati, Walsh, Woodbury.
Okay. And by the way, once he's on the scoop and then put on the stretcher, the priority is to get him into that ambulance, correct?
Correct.
And part of the reason for that is he was cold, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your priority was you wanted to warm him up, correct?
Correct.
And the best place to do that would have been the inside of that ambulance, correct?
Correct.
So it wasn't that he was put on the stretcher and then there was some detour in terms of where he was taken. You or whoever took him, made a beeline for the back of that ambulance in order to get him warm, correct?
Correct.
And once he's in the ambulance, the priority at that point would be to close the doors of the ambulance, correct?
Correct.
Because if you leave the doors open, there's a blizzard outside, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Let's go ahead, Ms. Tina. Keep moving forward, please.
And so the doors were closed to the ambulance, correct?
At some point, yes.
All right. And inside the doors of that ambulance, as you testified, was at least, not naming everybody, but at least you and Nuttall and Flamati, correct?
Correct.
And once those doors were closed to the ambulance, none of you left the ambulance, correct?
None of us, meaning?
I'm not talking specifically about you and Nuttall and Flamati.
I don't believe so.
No. You would have remained in the ambulance all the way to the hospital, and that's the point in which the doors will be open, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about the scene that you came upon in terms of the people who were there when you arrived, sir. You had previously testified that you saw, I believe you testified that you saw two women and a law enforcement officer already on scene, correct?
Correct.
One of those women appeared to have blood around her mouth, correct?
Correct.
It was something red, but you assumed that it was blood, correct?
Correct.
And that led you to also believe that she had rendered or tried to render CPR, correct?
Objection.
Is that what you thought?
Yes.
Okay.
And while you were on scene, it was the woman who had the blood around her mouth who appeared to be most upset, correct?
Correct.
She was really upset, correct?
Yes.
Would you go so far as to say she was distraught,
Yes.
hysterical,
Yes.
frantic?
Yes.
And you heard her say, he's dead, he's fucking dead, something like that, correct?
Correct.
And she didn't say it in the tone of voice that I just said it, correct?
Correct.
She was screaming when she said that, correct?
Correct.
It was very easy for you to discern that her words were, he's dead, he's fucking dead, correct?
Correct.
And she repeated it more than once, correct?
Correct.
And it's fair to say that at no point in time did you ever hear her say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me, sir, that you have been extremely consistent in terms of your memory of what she said, correct?
Correct.
You've been asked these questions not for the first time by Mr. Lally or me in court today. There have been other occasions where people have asked you, what did the woman with the blood on her mouth say when she was on scene, correct?
Correct.
You were asked that by Trooper Proctor on February 9th of 2022, correct?
I don't recall.
It's probably unfair of me to say the date, but you do recall speaking to a state trooper not long after these incidents, correct?
Correct.
And to that state trooper, you told him that what she said was, he's dead, he's fucking dead, correct?
I don't recall.
You don't recall saying anything differently than that, do you?
I remember saying a lot differently, but I might have also said that. I just don't recall.
Well, you don't, and let me rephrase that. You don't recall changing her words at all. You recall, you've always said he's dead, he's fucking dead, correct?
Correct.
That was not only to the state police on February 9th, but then in April of 2022, you were in a grand jury setting, correct?
Correct.
There was no defense attorney there on that day, correct?
I don't believe so.
You don't remember seeing me there?
No, I didn't see that.
Mr. Lally was asking you the questions, correct?
Correct.
And there, you also said that what the woman with the blood on her mouth said was, he's dead, he's fucking dead, correct?
Correct.
And you've testified to that today.
Yes, sir.
You've never changed that story, correct?
Correct.
And that is because the truth does not change, correct?
Correct.
All right, at this point, I'd like to play a 15-second portion of a video, which I would offer as the next exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay, so we'll watch it and then you can
Thank you
offer
very
it.
much.
With no narration, right?
Never. And before you start, I'm not as interested in the video, sir. I'm interested in the audio. So if you could listen as best you can.
Sure.
You got blood problem? Did you run? Did you run? Huh?
Would you agree with me, sir, that we heard what you heard that night, which is, he's dead, he's fucking dead?
It was kind of hard for me to hear.
Okay.
I heard about, does he do drugs? I couldn't really hear the background.
I may have a moment.
Okay.
May we approach?
Okay.
Hey guys, sorry, I was getting ready. I am, let's see, let me pause this. Okay. I am getting ready to have to go. So, couple options. We can stop here and we can catch up when we catch up on the case. I can leave it run until 1 o'clock. The only problem is if something happens with the stream and my computer cuts out or whatever, then that would be the end of it. Or I can come back later. We can watch the rest of this and then Coburger, or we can catch up on Daybell. I don't mind either way. I'm happy to come back if y'all want to watch the rest of this. If you want to watch Coburger, if you want to catch up on Daybell today so we can start fresh tomorrow. It's totally up to y'all, but I just need to know what y'all want to do. So let's say 1, keep stream going, 2, catch up tomorrow, or 3, come back, watch this, and get Coburger. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, so we would stop now, and then probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock, I could come back. I have to do some prep to, I have to make another stream, so it might take me a minute. So it'd be about 2:30, 3 o'clock. We could come back, and then we can watch Coburger. We can watch the rest of this, and then we can watch Coburger if you want, or alternatively, we can come back, watch the rest of this, and then watch Daybell. We can do whatever you want. I got nothing to do. So it'd be probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock. Set your notifications. And then so we would stop here for right now, and then we could come back. Everybody says 3, 3, 3, 3. I don't know what it's about, Steph. It could be the last thing that was going on was that they were not feeling his alibi. They said it didn't have enough information. So I don't know if maybe they're going to say, hey, we need more info. I haven't seen anything about what it's about. So I would like to at least finish this and then Coburger. So tomorrow we can catch up on Daybell. I would like to watch today's testimony of Daybell because Kay was on the stand. That's the grandmother. And I think that'll be really interesting. I don't know who else was on the stand, but I definitely think Kay is going to be an interesting one. So I don't know if Karen Reed will come back tomorrow afternoon. I have a feeling they're going to say no, but we'll see. The court schedule is like so wonky. So wonky. And I don't know how long Coburger is going to be because it doesn't start till 1. So while I'm at PT, if I can look at it, I'll try to figure out what it's about and let y'all know. So let's just plan on coming back around, let's say between 3 and 3:30. Can we say that? I just because like I said, when I get back, I'm gonna have to, because we didn't make any kind of thumbnails or anything for Coburger, and yeah. So just y'all let me know if you're good with that, and I'm gonna end stream and go to I'm gonna go get beat up, because why wouldn't? You guys good? You think it's good? And he says, okay. Lauren probably will go to sleep. So good night, Lauren. Henny, if you go to sleep, both of y'all, when you get up, the video will be up. You can watch it so you're caught up with us if you want. It's not going anywhere. Jenny's threatened my life to not delete it, so I won't. But okay, I'm gonna assume y'all think it's okay, and I am going to end the stream. If you wouldn't mind, please, for our lovely, lovely hostess, not me, of this channel, Jenny, if you make sure you please hit your like button and share, do all the YouTube things. I appreciate it. Penny, I understand it's too early for me too. But if you can come back, I know it's probably pretty early for you, Lauren. But the video will be up. It'll say something like remainder of Karen Reed and Koberger or something like that. Anyways, love you guys, mean it, and I will see you shortly. Bye.